Chapter 1487. As Wang Ming's personal bodyguard, like most cultivators, Jia Yin generally didn't need to rest at all. Her task was to protect Wang Ming and assist him in some of his experiments. In addition, if she discovered that Wang Ming was conducting relatively dangerous experiments, Jia Yin would also consider reporting the problem to her superiors. Wang Ming actually didn't dislike Jia Yin, but there were times when she was too rigid in her work. Most importantly, there were a lot of things that he couldn't explain to her, which created some communication barriers. Then, Wang Ming thought of an idea. He had specially invented the sleeping pod, a cultivation magic treasure that was slightly black technology. Although cultivators could go without sleep for a long time, their bodies would inevitably be distracted when they were constantly working, and over time, their spirit root might even be affected to some extent. There weren't too many side effects. It was nothing more than overdrawing on the body in advance, resulting in a drop in concentration, rough skin, and so on. Wang Ming's sleeping pod was a tool specially designed to deal with this kind of situation. Sleeping for 5 minutes in the sleeping pod was equivalent to sleeping for 24 hours, and could quickly recharge a cultivator's batteries. Currently, the sleeping pods that Wang Ming had invented could be divided into the home type and the capsule type. The capsule-type sleeping pod had already been put into military use. As long as it was placed on the ground, the capsule would automatically expand when it was shaken, and then turn into a sleeping pod the size of a person. It was also a one-button operation to retract it, and it could be compressed back into a capsule by pressing a specific button. Wang Ming had now successfully applied for a patent on the sleeping pod. After the official announcement that it would be put into military use, there were a lot of orders from military factories, which was also Wang Ming's source of funding for his experiments. Just counting the orders from Huaxiao Nation alone, there were already several billion yuan. When he ran out of money, he would make some little gadgets to make a little money, that was all. As the most powerful brain, it had never been difficult for Wang Ming to develop new products. Of course, on the surface, he had invented the sleeping pod to serve the military, but the truth was that his original purpose had been to restrain Jia Yin. Jia Yin wouldn't let him do many of the experiments because they were dangerous. In this case, it was fine as long as he could lock Jia Yin in the sleeping pod. Although Jia Yin was a tomboy, she was in the end a girl who loved beauty. Jia Yin didn't need Wang Ming to explain that not sleeping for a long time wasn't good for the skin. Thus, after the sleeping pods were invented, Jia Yin had practically become accustomed to using them. Wang Ming had also figured out how she used them, and had taken advantage of Jia Yin's time off to conduct a lot of secret experiments. So at this moment, Jia Yin should still be inside. Wang Ming instantly quivered when he saw that slightly murderous gaze. "I didn't expect you to be so experienced in the field of love. Why haven't I heard you mention it before?" Jia Yin's face was clouded as she focused all her attention on Wang Ming's words. He didn't care who on earth Wang Ming was discussing emotions with. When she woke up, she could hear Wang Ying's voice outside. She only knew that it clearly wasn't Wang Ling's voice. It was probably Wang Ming talking to a friend on speakerphone. She didn't care who he talked to. But as an official magic treasure researcher, while Wang Ming was an academician, he was also a magic treasure consultant specially hired by the army. This was a member of the organization. Since he was a member of the organization, Jia Yin felt that it was necessary for her to be concerned about his lifestyle. "Yinzi, listen to me, it's not what you think." Wang Ming's forehead was already drenched in sweat. He didn't know why he was in such a hurry to explain these things to Jia Yin. He just felt that if he didn't explain, the consequences might be very serious. That was because he realized that whenever Jia Yin was in a bad mood, this guy would cook to vent his emotions. And he was the lab rat of Yinzi cuisine. As for how terrifying Jia Yin's cooking was, Wang Ming felt that he didn't need to explain. It wasn't just that it was poisonous, it was all corpse-dissolving powder. Wang Ming felt that after eating it, his entire body would be melted by the poison. Thus, combined with mathematical concepts, Wang Ming called it factorization. Seeing that a big battle was inevitable that night, Wang Ling couldn't be bothered to put up with it, so he hurriedly left the lab and left Wang Ming alone. He wasn't worried that Wang Ming would die. In any case, Wang Ming now had the support of the Great Fortune spell, so even if Zhai Yin used force, there was a high chance that Wang Ming would continuously miss him. However, the effect of the Great Fortune spell would only last for a week. After this week, Wang Ming's life would presumably become very exciting. It was still Sunday, December 13th. At 8:00 that morning, Wang Ling sent Wang Ming a message to confirm whether he was still alive and well. Wang Ming was full of praise for the Great Fortune spell. "My boy, this move of yours is too strong. After you left yesterday, I was flustered and exasperated, and used a set of Wing Chun boxing on me, but in the end, it didn't even hit me." He knew it would be like this. Wang Ling wasn't surprised by this outcome. He replied to Wang Ming in a few short messages. The gist of it was for Wang Ming to take it easy and not be too cheap. Because the spell only lasted for a limited time, if he acted stupidly now, it would be Wang Ming himself who would suffer when the time was up. Wang Ling usually disdained using the Great Fortune spell on himself, because it made his life very boring. And unless there was a special need for it, Wang Ling didn't intend to use it on other people lightly. For ordinary people, the Great Fortune spell might have a very good effect for a while, but if they got used to it, they would become dependent on it. In fact, it wasn't just dependence. Apart from Wang Ling himself, when anyone else used this spell, the effect of the increase in fortune would continuously decrease, and the more frequently it was used, the faster it would decrease. Wang Ming was a powerful person. With the blessing of the Great Fortune spell, it was like adding wings to a tiger and adding flowers to a brocade. But there was no need to use it frequently. On the other side, Lotus Sun slept for a very long time. When she woke up, she found herself lying on the big bed in the hotel's presidential suite, and Sun Yinger was next to her, taking care of her. "Rong, you're awake? What's wrong with me?" The girl got up and looked at the bathrobe she was wearing, and couldn't help feeling puzzled. "Who helped me change?" "Ling Zhenren, of course." Sun Yinger smiled evilly. "You were too tired yesterday, so you fainted. Ling Zhenren brought you here to take a bath and change your clothes." "Classmate Wang Ling? This, how is this possible?" Lotus Sun covered her small mouth, her beautiful face pale. "I'm just kidding, of course it was me." Sun Yinger's face was full of grievance. "You know, Rong, my waist isn't very good to begin with, but then again, are you looking forward to something?" Lotus Sun's face instantly burned to her ears. "I wasn't," although she hadn't been able to get along with Wang Ling alone yesterday. When she saw the sack of milk candies he had left for her, she was still taken aback. Although there was regret in her heart, she was more happy and delighted. After accepting the sack of milk candies, Lotus Sun was in a great mood. Close to noon that day, the girl was about to check out at the front desk on the first floor, when the elevator suddenly stopped on the third floor. When she opened the door, she saw Kumiya Ryoko and Audiobook standing at the elevator door in the same style of traditional Chinese clothing. Lotus Sun's expression was extremely astonished. As expected of Senior Joie, that was too fast. But the atmosphere at the moment seemed a little stiff. It wasn't until the elevator reached the first floor and she heard the ding sound of the door opening that Lotus Sun plucked up the courage to ask Kumiya Ryoko tentatively, "Classmate Kumiya, can I ask you a question?" "Go ahead." Kumiya Ryoko snorted. "Classmate Kumiya, have you already been won over by Senior Joie?" Then, Lotus Sun saw Kumiya Ryoko's originally calm face gradually change color. Chapter 1488. Hearing such a straightforward question, the expression on Ryoko's face instantly became extremely interesting. She and Audiobook had gone downstairs mainly to hand over the task with the female bodyguard called Junko. Next, Brother Wei and the other two would be watched by Junko as important, tainted witnesses. It was supposed to be a normal handover of work, but Ryoko Kamiya didn't expect to run into Lotus Sun when she went downstairs. Furthermore, he was asked such a strange question: strategy? What a joke, she would not be tricked by this flowery old liar. Ryoko blushed. In fact, she didn't reply directly. She just snorted and said, "Don't think that you can talk nonsense just because you helped me. Audra and I only have a normal working relationship." She crossed her arms and looked a little impatient. As soon as the elevator door opened, she slipped out. Lotus-san gazed at the young girl's back. There was actually some faint panic under her calm exterior. "Senior Audra, you really picked up a treasure." A smile hung on Lotus-san's face. In her heart, she also felt that Ryoko Kuya was much cuter than she had imagined. Originally, she and Jugong Ryoko were like fire and water, mainly because Lotus-san was worried that Jugong Ryoko would harm the youth in her heart. Furthermore, they might even come up with some kind of seduction plan to deal with classmate Wang Ling. This was absolutely not allowed to happen. But from the inquiry just now, Lotus-san felt that perhaps even Ryoko herself hadn't realized that she had already fallen. He might not like Audra yet, but he definitely had a good impression of him. After all, Yoshiko was a person who liked to say one thing and mean another. Junior sister Lotus-san must be joking. Audra smiled bitterly. The two of them stepped out of the elevator and walked very slowly with tacit understanding. "I see that Senior Audra has no qualms about going after classmate Ryoko. It looks like you already know, right?" Just a few steps away, Lotus-san's probing question startled Audra. "Junior sister Lotus-san is referring to the 6 mothers-in-law I'll have to face in the future?" Audra's eyes darted around as he feigned ignorance. "Senior Audra, you're underestimating me too much. I can still find out about this." Lotus-san sighed and said with a dignified smile, "But please rest assured, Senior, I won't tell anyone about classmate Yoshiko's secret." "That's good." Audra heaved a sigh of relief. "Actually, I'm also waiting." He was waiting for the day when Kamiya Ryoko would confess her secret to him. Moreover, he deeply believed that it wouldn't be too late for that day to come. When she came to the front desk to check out, Lotus-san felt the hostility of the female bodyguard named Junko. Lotus-san couldn't remember when she had offended her, but she had a rough understanding of the hostility in her eyes. After all, in the female bodyguard's impression, she had always been the enemy of the Jugong family. "Junko, don't be so rude." Kamiya Ryoko noticed Junko's abnormality and quickly reminded her softly. Although the female bodyguard did not understand what had happened between her Miss and Miss Sun, she still restrained the sharpness in her eyes. "The most important thing is what I told you last night. Someone in my family is trying to take advantage of my study abroad period to harm me," Kamiya Yoshiko said. It had now been confirmed that the people involved were the Wei trio, who worked under 6th Madam's command. As for the Ghost Chart Rebellion, Kamiya Ryoko felt that it was another group of people plotting in secret. That was to say, there were at least 2 groups of people who wanted to deal with her. Furthermore, these 2 groups of people were already out in the open. As for whether there were any other forces in the family who wanted to make a move against her, Kamiya Ryoko had no idea. She had come to Huashio Nation to resolve this foreign aggression. She had thought that after smoothly exposing Audro's matter, the Jugong family would be able to gain a deeper foothold in the Huashio market. But Kamiya Ryoko had never expected that before this foreign aggression had been resolved, the family's internal problems would actually erupt ahead of time. Last night, Kamiya Ryoko had thought about it for a long time. She felt that it was more important to settle the Jugong family's internal affairs first. If the Jugong family fought endlessly, it would be useless even if she eventually won the Huashio market. If the family wasn't united, in the end, it would all be for naught. What was more, the new evidence that had emerged now suggested that the matter with Audra back then might have been a misunderstanding on the part of the Jugong family. True combat strength wouldn't lie. Audra was indeed very strong. Kamiya Ryoko had already experienced this for herself. After assigning the basic tasks, Kamiya Ryoko went one step further and said to the female bodyguard in front of her, "Junko, while you watch over Ah Wei and the other 2, I'll hire a new bodyguard to be in charge of my safety for the time being." Kamiya Ryoko had originally wanted to keep this a secret, but Junko was one of her own, so she felt that it was better to be honest. "Bodyguard? Who?" Junko was stunned. She had actually heard the rumor about the new bodyguard last night, and was very curious about who it was. It's me, I've been standing in front of you for a long time. Audra pointed to himself with a radiant smile. You? Junko was shocked. Wasn't this guy the target of their investigation? But very quickly, her expression returned to normal. Junko had her own understanding of why her young lady had hired Audra as a bodyguard. It had to be to better get close to Audra and find evidence of his impersonation, which was why she had arranged this show, right? She understood. In fact, Junko herself was also very angry with these impersonators. The main thing was that there had been more and more news about impersonators recently, such as impersonating someone else's identity and getting into a university. Although their education had been revoked later, this kind of behavior had already interfered with other people's lives. These people who used power and money to change their own fates had no idea how much effort the person they were impersonating had put in to change their own fates. Due to the long period of time, it was usually very difficult to find direct evidence against these imposters who had power and influence. So eldest Miss Ryoko had thought of hiring Audra as a bodyguard to keep this guy by her side, which would make it easier to collect evidence, as expected of eldest Miss Ryoko. Looking at the female bodyguard's frowning face, Jimiya Ryoko was speechless. She had never doubted Junko's imagination, but faced with Audra and her current situation, Jimiya Ryoko indeed felt that it would be difficult to explain this complicated relationship in just a few words. Thus, she could only sigh in her heart and ignore what the female bodyguard was thinking for the time being. Also, have you found the senior I asked you to help me find? Jimiya Ryoko suddenly asked at that moment. The senior changed his address, and it took us a while to find him, the female bodyguard said. Judging from his current whereabouts, he seems to be going to Battle Sect a lot recently. Going to Battle Sect a lot? At that moment, Jimiya Ryoko glanced at Audra and felt that he could help. Many people go to Battle Sect, so who is this senior? Audra asked, rubbing the back of his head. This is the original creator of the Ghost Record. Jimiya Ryoko looked at Audra and said, I can't tell you anything else, but this senior's name is Jin Deng. Audra. Chapter 1489. What a small world, Audra sighed with emotion in his heart. Although when Kamiya Ryoko said the keyword, Battle Sect, he vaguely felt that it might be related to someone he knew. It was just that he didn't expect this acquaintance to be Senior Golden Lamp. After all, he was a monk who had lived through so many reincarnations. He had done all kinds of jobs. Even the production of the Jogong family's Ghost Manual had something to do with him. He was basically a full-time expert. It looks like you know this senior. Ryoko Kamiya blinked at Audra, as if expecting something. Audra couldn't help sneering in his heart. This was more than just an acquaintance. After being beaten into submission by Wang Ling, Senior Golden Lamp was already one of them. Although he didn't have a position in Battle Sect on the surface, he was in fact in the group chat of Battle Sect's core members. Furthermore, because Audra was Wang Ling's disciple, Jin Deng actually took good care of him. Basically, as long as Audra dared to ask, Jin Deng would never refuse his request. Of course, Audra generally wouldn't specially ask Jin Deng for help for no reason. He knew very well that the Golden Lamp was willing to help him largely out of respect for his master. And for a senior like this, even if he returned the favor, he might not even be able to see him, so he might end up causing trouble for his master. But now, for Kamiya Yoshiko's words, Audra felt that he could be bold for once. The main thing was that this was not a request, but an instruction to help Kamiya Ryoko pull some strings to meet Golden Lamp Monk. I have a rough idea of where Senior Golden Lamp is, but it's hard to say whether we'll meet. Audra deliberately kept her in suspense. How about this, I'll take classmate Yoshiko to have a look today. I'll go too. I can send someone else to keep an eye on them. Junko said. You can't. You have to stay and look after him. Audra looked at the female bodyguard. Monk Golden Lamp isn't used to being disturbed. He won't be happy if too many people go. But, just do as Audra says, Chunzi. Keeping an eye on the three of them is your top priority, Ryoko Kamiya said. I understand, miss. Is there really something going on between you and this odd joie? Junko felt that she had discovered a huge secret. He was obviously sending her away. It was obvious that he wanted to spend some alone time with her. If you talk nonsense again, I'll deduct all of your salary. Ryoko blushed and snorted. The reason why I chose you to keep an eye on him is because I can only choose you. Now that Ah-wei and the others were being protected, the others thought that they were dead. Such an important secret must be guarded by the person I trust the most. Am I the person whom young mistress trusts the most? Of course. The female bodyguard named Junko was helpless. She was moved by Kamiya Ryoko's words. She could only obey the order. I understand, Mississippi Junko won't let you down. Then, following Kamiya Ryoko's instructions, she obediently went to the front desk to re-register her identity. Ajua glanced at the female bodyguard's temporary ID card and passport from a distance. The name on both of them was Springgrass Chung Chun. From the beginning, he had felt that there was something wrong with this female bodyguard, but he just couldn't put his finger on it. When all was said and done, Ajua actually didn't want to doubt Kusakusa Shigeru's loyalty to Ryoko. But for the sake of caution, he decided to secretly investigate Junko's background. What are you thinking? Can we go now? At that moment, Ryoko Kamiya looked at Ajua expectantly. Nothing, I was just thinking about the name Springgrass Chongchun, said Ajua. What's wrong with this name? Isn't the combination of Chao and Zhongdong? And Miss Junko's catchphrase seems to be, I understand. Ajua smiled. So, Miss Junko is your Kyugu family's king of understanding? Hearing this, Ryoko's mouth twitched. She felt as if she had heard a chilling joke. Do you think you're very humorous? Are you cold? Sorry. Ajua smiled apologetically. If he had the time, I'm afraid he would have already found Senior Golden Lamp. Kamiya Ryoko sighed. You're in such a hurry to find Senior. Is it because you want to know why the replica Ghost album went berserk? Ajua asked. Yes. The copy I have has never had any problems before, said Ryoko frankly. But after what happened yesterday, this thing is like a ticking time bomb in my hands. Don't worry. We'll definitely find it. Ajua comforted the anxious girl and composed himself. And are you sure we're leaving now? Yes. Of course, the sooner, the better. But we haven't changed out of our clothes yet, have we? Ajua smiled. Of course, if you don't mind, I certainly won't mind classmate Ryoko and I wearing this couple's hanfu when we go out. Rogue, Kamiya Ryoko blushed. Flustered and exasperated, she stomped on Ajua's foot and fled upstairs to change her clothes. Following behind them, Ajua had a sour expression on his face. This stomp had been very comfortable. If she had stepped on him a few times while wearing black stockings, Ajua would have thought it would have been very interesting. After Kamiya Ryoko and Ajua left, Asakusa Nakaharu officially took over the task of looking after Ah-wei and the other two. She would notice the slightest movement in the room diagonally opposite the door. According to the rules of the Witness Protection Program, Wei and the other two weren't allowed to leave the room without a special request. They were staying in a 3-person suite, and the signal in the room was shielded. No communication magic treasure could send the signal out. Junko would be responsible for their meals. She would deliver their meals at a fixed time, and after they were done eating, she would take away all the trash. Of course, to ensure that Ah-wei and the other two wouldn't go crazy in the room, the TV in the room could be turned on as usual. Moreover, a game console had been installed in the room, so that they could play some standalone games that didn't require an online connection to pass the time. This was a very simple job, and even a little boring, but the advantage was that it was generally more leisurely. Reasonably speaking, Asakusa Nakaharu should be happy, but she didn't feel relaxed at all. She had wanted to go with Kamiya Ryoko to see Jean Deng earlier because she had her own plans. It was absolutely right not to stay in the hotel at this time. Because Ah-wei and the other two were very important to Miss Ryoko, but now that she was forced to stay, even Asakusa Nakahara herself didn't know what would happen next. She sat on the bed, hugging her knees, her thoughts extremely complicated. At that moment, her phone vibrated. Just like before, an unknown call made Asakusa Nakahara's heart instantly jump. What's going on? It seems that you haven't reported the situation for 2 days in a row. Although the voice on the other end of the phone had been modified, it was still a person with a rough voice. Asakusa Nakahara knew who was talking to her. She immediately fell into silence, and after a long time, she said, "Sorry. I asked for leave to go to the hospital yesterday, so, don't make excuses." The person on the other end of the phone didn't bother to listen to her explanation. "Ms. Junko, I hope you can understand your situation and position. Don't play tricks." "I know, very good. Now, let me ask you. Is Inoue Masahide still alive?" On the other end of the phone, the person sneered in a tone as if everything was under control. "Ms. Junko, I hope you can answer truthfully." Chapter 1490. Kiyomiya Ryoko had changed into light white sportswear. In fact, this was spring grass Shigure's clothes. Given that there would be more field work later on, it seemed more convenient to move around in sportswear. She had put her hair up and a white cap over it. From a distance, she looked like a very good-looking boy. Of course, the main reason why Kiyomiya Ryoko looked like a boy wasn't the sportswear, the coiled hair or the cap, but the fact that her chest wasn't too high above sea level. Audiobook personally drove Kiyomiya Ryoko to where Golden Lantern was currently staying. On the way, from time to time, he would look at the girl sitting in the front passenger seat with her arms crossed and her eyes slightly closed. Halfway there, Kiyomiya Ryoko finally couldn't take it anymore. "Have you seen enough? Shouldn't I be the one asking that?" Audiobook gripped the steering wheel, not the slightest bit flustered. "What do you mean?" Kiyomiya Ryoko frowned. "If you don't look at me, how do you know I'm looking at you?" Kiyomiya Ryoko was stupefied by this question. This was Audiobook's usual roguish sophistry. She knew that as a foreigner, she would most likely be at a disadvantage if she continued to bicker with him. So she simply snorted and turned her head away. "If you want to look at me more generously. Isn't it a little too petty to look at me through the reflection in the glass window?" Audiobook laughed. "You, nonsense." Audiobook didn't know if he had hit the nail on the head, but the girl's face heated up. "As long as you know whether I'm talking nonsense or not. Aren't you always looking at me out of the corner of your eye? I'm driving, so I have to watch the road. I can't help it, I can only look at you out of the corner of my eye." She was glad that the car was now passing through a tunnel. The environment inside was relatively dark, so her expression couldn't be seen, otherwise it would have been too embarrassing. Kiyomiya Ryoko was a very good person at adjusting her mood, even Lotus Sun couldn't catch up to her in this regard. The moment the car drove out of the tunnel, the girl's expression had already returned to normal, and she had that cold poker face again. Unfortunately, Audiobook sighed in his heart. He had never denied that he liked to tease Ryoko Kamiya. The main reason was that he deeply felt this girl's adorable side. But the problem was that Ryoko's emotions fluctuated quickly, and she also adjusted quickly. Sometimes, he really couldn't tell what the girl was thinking. "How did you do it?" Finally, he couldn't help asking. "What?" "Your ability to control your emotions." Ryoko blushed. "When I was young, I was a child star for a period of time." "Oh, so you've dabbled in show business before?" Audiobook was surprised. "That's not right, but it doesn't seem to have been mentioned in your resume." "Which TV series did you shoot?" "It's just an advertisement." Ryoko Kamiya frowned slightly, seemingly unwilling to face her past. "Then why didn't you consider continuing? It's not like you've grown ugly. Instead, you've become cute." When Audiobook said this, Kamiya Ryoko quickly raised her hand to press down on her hat and did her best to restrain her expression. "This wasn't something I wanted to do in the first place. It was my mother's wishful thinking," Ryoko explained. It was for this reason that she had never been willing to mention that she had once shot an advertisement as a child star. In Ryoko's view, this was actually a dark history. Of course, the female bodyguard Junko knew about it, but because she knew that this was a minefield, Kusakusa Shigeru had never mentioned it. But now, Ryoko Kamiya had actually taken the initiative to bring it up in front of Audjua. She herself felt it a little inconceivable. After that, there was a long silence in the car. It wasn't easy to find a chance to be alone with the girl, and Audjua certainly wouldn't miss out on this kind of teasing. He knew that Ryoko Kamiya had always paid more attention to her image. In a situation like this where there were no outsiders around, it didn't matter even if she joked a little, because no one else could hear it. "What kind of advertisements did you shoot?" Audjua asked. The corners of Ryoko's mouth twitched. She had thought that this topic was over. Sure enough, she had underestimated Audjua. This old liar was obviously doing it on purpose. None of your business. She clenched her little fists, the expression on her face changing like the energy indicator light on Ultraman's chest. "It's not a serious advertisement, is it?" Audjua deliberately sounded her out. "Of course it's serious. It's a lifestyle advertisement. It's something that every family uses." Ryoko Kamiya was excited, but then realized that she had let the cat out of the bag. A lifestyle advertisement? Audjua thought for a bit. Toilet paper? Roll paper? This was the first answer that came to his mind. After all, these two things were essential for a single man. Late at night, having toilet paper as a companion was also the romance of a man living alone. Seeing that the girl's expression didn't change much, Audjua knew that he had most likely guessed wrong, and hurriedly corrected himself. "It's not a birth control product, is it? I was so cute when I was little. Anyone who saw me would want to have a few more. How could I endorse a birth control product?" After saying this, Ryoko Kamiya realized that Audjua had once again gotten information out of her. This was a detective skill that Audjua had learned from old Liang of Songhai First Prison. Audjua himself hadn't expected that it would actually be useful in love. As he drove, Audjua suddenly laughed as he gripped the steering wheel. "I know, the advertisement you're endorsing isn't for something like diapers, is it?" After all, this was an advertisement that Ryoko Kamiya regarded as a dark history. This was the only type of advertisement that Audjua could think of. What was an advertisement for baby diapers like? An ignorant baby, in a situation where he didn't know anything. The image of a naked baby crawling around on a soft cushion while the staff teased him with laughter. Just thinking about it made him feel ashamed. This time, Kamiya Ryoko buried her head in her knees, looking autistic. Listening to Audjua's laughter as he tried not to laugh, she finally jerked her head up and looked at him with an extremely gloomy expression. "If you dare search, I'll never talk to you again." "Don't worry, I won't," Audjua comforted her. In fact, that was exactly what he was thinking. A few minutes later, he was driving up a mountain road. "What is this place?" "I've already contacted Senior Golden Lamp. Senior Golden Lamp is cultivating in seclusion deep in the mountains these days." When the car was halfway up the mountain, there was no longer a path for cars to go uphill. This was an abandoned observation deck that hadn't been visited for a long time. Because there had been countless accidents here, the road had already been closed long ago. Audjua could only park the car on the side and choose to walk up the mountain with Ryoko. Is Senior Golden Lamp really in a place like this? This is Mount Wind and Thunder. Because of its unique geographical environment, the top of the mountain is sometimes shrouded in thunderclouds. But for cultivators, it's a good place to temper their bodies. Because there's a certain chance of being struck by lightning. Dubiously, Ryoko followed Audjua up the mountain road. Monk Golden Lamp was nowhere to be seen, but his voice could already be heard. The girl was instantly dumbfounded. It sounded like an exorcism chant: "Great mighty dragon of heaven, revered Ksitigarbha, Daluo Dharma mantra, Prajna Buddhas, Prajna Pata mantra. Flying dragon in the sky. Go." After reciting the chant, Audiobook and Ryoko saw a 3,000-foot thunder dragon scurry into the clouds from the top of the mountain. Chapter 1491. When this thunder dragon shot out of Golden Lamp Monk's palm, it stirred up all the dark clouds in the sky, twisting them together like fried dough twists. In a flash, thunder roared in the sky, accompanied by a dragon's roar. By the time Audiobook and Ryoko reached the mountain top, which had been covered by dark clouds, was now a dazzling scene of sunlight shining through the clouds and fog. Monk Jin Dang's palm had completely depleted the thunderclouds that had accumulated in this area. But Mount Wind Thunder had a special environment, and it was an unusual phenomenon for sunlight to shine here. The bright scene was temporary, and in less than half an hour, it would be covered by a large number of dark clouds again. Ordinary people wouldn't dare set foot in a dangerous area covered by heavenly thunder like this, and Golden Lamp Monk naturally didn't care. He could even withstand the thunder of primal chaos, to say nothing of this insignificant nature. The reason why he had chosen Mount Wind Thunder was actually because he was practicing his brand new palm technique, the Great Mighty Heavenly Dragon. It was a palm technique that could condense the power of nature and transform it into spirit power, thereby creating explosive lethality. Golden Lamp Monk had tried many ways to condense the power of nature, but in the end, he had found that natural thunder was the best for enhancing the power of his palm technique. Of course, compared with the monk's other more lethal palm techniques, the Great Mighty Heavenly Dragon was in fact a long way off. In Golden Lamp Monk's own judgment, this palm technique could only be regarded as his basic palm technique, but there was indeed a need to study it. The main thing was that Golden Lamp Monk had realized that his palm technique was too powerful. Although the persona of a holy monk with one palm was very handsome, there was a small chance that he would make a mistake when faced with a mission to capture someone alive. He had clearly wanted to capture someone alive, but in the end, he had sent them away with one palm, which was very embarrassing. The Mighty Heavenly Dragon was a new spell that Monk Golden Lamp had developed based on his current situation. Apart from the fact that he could adjust its power, the more important thing was that this spell could allow the monk to capture any ghost alive on Earth with 100% certainty. You are Senior Golden Lamp. Ryoko hadn't expected that Audiobook wouldn't lie to her this time. He had smoothly led her to this legendary great senior who had developed the ghost manual. There was clearly some excitement on her face. She had wanted to kneel down in a grand salute, but the moment she bent her knees, Golden Lamp Monk helped her up. Miss, you don't have to be so polite. Tyrant smiled. His bright and clean head was reflecting light under the direct sunlight. Komiya Yoshiko was stunned. She suddenly felt that Golden Lamp Monk was much kinder than she had imagined, and he looked younger than she had imagined. Senior, do you know me? Ryoko Komiya asked. Of course, you are a child of the Jogong family. Jin Dang said, the old master of the Jogong family used to be my old friend, and that a ghost record I gave him back then was actually the proof of our friendship. Then you must know about me, senior? Of course. Mr. Zhua and I are also good friends. Before he told me, I already knew that you were coming to find me. A few short words shocked Komiya Yoshiko. Monk Golden Lamp's foresight was even more amazing than she had imagined. What surprised the girl the most was that this great senior, who had done their Jogong family a favor, actually seemed to have a deep friendship with Audiobook. So now Komiya Ryoko felt that she was completely confused. She felt that the Audiobook she knew wasn't the same old liar who was widely rumored to be in the Jogong family. This humble monk already knows the real reason why this copy of the ghost record in Miss Ryoko's hands is rioting. At that moment, the monk narrowed his eyes. Someone used the main book of the ghost record to forcibly open the escape passage of the copy and release those ghosts. Used the main book, Komiya Yoshiko frowned deeply. The main book of the ghost record had been sealed in the Jogong family's house. In other words, the real reason why this copy of the ghost record had rioted was indeed related to someone in the Jogong family on Sun Island. Komiya Yoshiko, but who on earth? Hearing this, the monk was silent for a while before he said indifferently, it's not time for this humble monk to reveal this matter. Because it concerns the fate of Miss Ryoko and the Jogong family. So this humble monk can only say this much. Miss Ryoko will have to investigate the rest on her own. I understand. Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Komiya Yoshiko's pupils contracted slightly. At the same time, she had a new plan in mind. To deal with the internal affairs of the Jogong family, she had to deal with them first. But if she returned to investigate in person now, she was bound to encounter an even more dangerous situation. So now, there seemed to be only one way left. This was the plan that Komiya Yoshiko had suspended. But now, it seemed that this plan was the best choice, and so, that night, Komiya Yoshiko went to see someone. After deciding to use the suspended plan again, it took her several hours to make up her mind. For Komiya Yoshiko, in her short life of more than 10 years, it was the first time that she had paid a special visit like this. As the person whom Komiya Yoshiko was asking for help, even Lotus-san was surprised. Classmate Yoshiko, in the living room of Lotus-san's villa, all kinds of gifts from Komiya Yoshiko were placed on the floor. There were perfume, high-end cosmetics, skincare products, and many local specialties exclusive to Sun Island. I know you don't lack anything, so if you want these things, just take them. In any case, I'm putting them here, so it doesn't matter if you throw them away. Komiya Yoshiko snorted. Classmate Yoshiko, since it's a gift from classmate Yoshiko, of course I'll cherish it. Lotus-san laughed. After understanding Komiya Yoshiko's personality, she was no longer surprised by some of the girl's harsh and rude words. Because these words had to be heard in reverse. Since you've accepted my gift, does that mean you're willing to help me? Komiya Yoshiko had a hopeful look in her eyes. I have to hear what kind of help it is first. Lotus-san smiled. If classmate Yoshiko is here for breast enhancement, there's nothing I can do. You speak as if you're very old. Komiya Yoshiko snorted. I'm older than you, classmate Yoshiko. Lotus-san smiled. She was deliberately testing Komiya Yoshiko's sincerity. In the end, to Lotus-san's surprise, the girl in front of her didn't get angry because of these words, and seemed to really want something from her. I didn't come to you for this. Komiya Yoshiko composed herself and looked at Lotus-san. After a moment of hesitation, she slowly said, I want to ask classmate Lotus-san to pretend to be me and return to the Komiya family. Why are you asking me? Faced with such a request, Lotus-san was surprised. At that moment, Komiya Yoshiko looked at Lotus-san and said seriously, because only you are fit to pretend to be me, Komiya Yoshiko. Is that so? Suddenly, Lotus-san smiled. It really wasn't Senior Audio's suggestion? In fact, just half an hour ago, Lotus-san had received a text message from Audio explaining Komiya Yoshiko's plan in detail. The first sentence at the beginning of the message was, Mistress. I beg you. Chapter 1492. He had Lotus-san disguise herself as him and return to Sun Island to solve the clan's internal problems. Ryoko Komiya really didn't have much confidence in whether Lotus-san would agree or not. While everyone in the Jogong family thought that she was still studying in Hwasyo Nation, the fake Jogong who was pretending to be her suddenly appearing in the family would definitely throw those people who were secretly plotting against her into chaos. And this transformation trick was something that Ryoko Kyuya had thought of from the beginning. She knew that someone in her family was trying to make a move against her, so she made a plan in advance. This was a good way to lure the snake out of its hole. It was just that Komiya Ryoko didn't expect that the people in the clan would be so eager to make a move on her, so the whole plan had to be carried out ahead of schedule. According to the original plan, Ryoko intended to let Junko play herself, but unfortunately, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Things had developed to this point, which was obviously not what Ryoko Komiya wanted to see. Human nature was complicated, even more complicated than the ghosts recorded in the ghost register. I see. After listening to Komiya Ryoko tell her everything she knew, Lotus-san nodded slightly. So, classmate Ryoko, you've already noticed that there's something wrong with the female bodyguard called Kusakusa Shigeru, right? Yes. The expression on Ryoko's face was a little melancholy. But it was only after I came to Huaxiao Nation that I learned the exact information. So, the plan to let Junko disguise herself as me and return to the Kyuga family to lure the snake out of its hole has to be changed. Why did she betray you? Maybe it's because he was threatened. What I know is that Junko has a sister who is not related to her by blood. Kamiya Ryoko said, it should be her sister who was kidnapped. From the looks of it, it was similar to the Sixth Madam. The Sixth Madam's family was a well-known underworld family on Sun Island. But we don't have any concrete evidence yet. Do you need help? No, in fact, Junko's sister has been successfully rescued by us, Kamiya Ryoko said. Since you knew there was something wrong with Miss Junko, why did you still send her to the hotel? Lotus-san asked. Hearing this, Ryoko frowned slightly. Junko watched me grow up. She's like a sister to me. He is indeed the person I trust the most. If she really wanted to kill me, she actually had a lot of opportunities to do so, but Junko never did it. So, you still believe in her? Will the witness protection program leak out? This is the final test. Kamiya Ryoko said, the other party is still hiding the fact that Junko's sister has been rescued and intends to continue to threaten Junko. Won't be discovered. We just need to use the videos that were recorded in advance. If we change the time slightly, Junko will still be kept in the dark unless we reveal the truth. One last question. At this time, Lotus-san sighed slightly and said, according to the original plan, Junko disguised herself as you. In order to avoid suspicion, are you going to find someone to disguise as Junko? That's right, there's actually someone who can impersonate Junko. But just now, Audiobook suggested that I replace him. Substitution? Who should we replace? Senior Golden Lamp. Audiobook told me that you also know this senior. Lotus-san, he said that Senior Golden Lamp had played the role of a woman in order to experience the sufferings of the mortal world. Also, with Senior Golden Lamp accompanying you, your safety can be guaranteed. In fact, when Kamiya Ryoko learned that the monk had been a cross-dressing big shot, her young heart had also collapsed. Senior Golden Lamp, this was one of the great seniors she respected the most in her life. Who would have thought that such a lofty and imposing image would actually be destroyed by one sentence from Audiobook? That was the whole story from beginning to end. Lotus-san still didn't know whether Kamiya's plan would be carried out smoothly or not. But just the thought of the monk pretending to be Junko and staying by her side was a very beautiful scene. After all, Lotus-san had Mysterious C's battle strength to back her up, so she had nothing to fear at all. But now, she was more afraid of laughing out loud. At that moment, Lotus-san couldn't help sighing with emotion in her heart. Senior Golden Lamp was too righteous. For the descendant of an old friend of the Kamiya family, he didn't hesitate to sacrifice himself to this extent. He was worthy of being the supreme Buddhist monk who had seen through the world of mortals, the strongest holy monk on earth. Such a great senior could go to this extent. So what reason did she have to refuse? In fact, Lotus-san had already thought through the matter of agreeing to Kamiya Ryoko's request when Audiobook had sent her a text message begging her. Because overall, Kamiya Ryoko was someone who could be developed. If she could rope her in, she wouldn't have to worry about her investigating Wang Ling in the future. Helping Kamiya Ryoko would not only solve student Wang Ling's worries, it would also eliminate her own concerns about Kamiya Ryoko. This was the best of both worlds, and Lotus-san felt that she had no reason to refuse. According to Kamiya Ryoko's plan, she would pretend to be Kamiya Ryoko, and Monk Golden Lamp would pretend to be the female bodyguard, Springgrass Chongchun. But this alone was far from enough. Because they didn't have to pretend to be Kamiya Ryoko from the beginning, they would have to act according to the circumstances after landing on the island. If they directly went to the island in disguise from the beginning, their goal would be too obvious. Thus, they needed a cover story. Audiobook had already thought of this for Kamiya Ryoko. On the night that Kamiya Ryoko visited Lotus-san's villa. Almost at the same time, Audiobook also paid a visit to the Wang family's small villa. Wang Ling had just ushered Audiobook into the bedroom, and the moment the door closed, Audiobook instantly knelt on the ground and drifted toward Wang Ling with inertia. Then, He hugged Wang Ling's thigh tightly. Shifu. Disciple, I beg you, you must go to the Sun Island exchange program. Disciple's happiness for the rest of his life is in your hands, Shifu. Wang Ling, there were 3 places in total for the Sun Island exchange program. In fact, this was Audiobook's special cover for Kamiya Ryoko's transformation plan to proceed smoothly. Because it was essentially for investigation purposes, the exchange quota could only be decided internally this time. That was to say, as a participant in the transformation plan, the monk would be the new teacher, Fire Ding, as the lead teacher for the inspection. Lotus Sun would also occupy one of the exchange quotas as a cover. Accompanying teachers didn't count, so there were still 2 places left for the exchange program. At that moment, Wang Ling rubbed his chin in thought. Even if he agreed to Audiobook's request. Then, who did Audiobook intend to give this extra quota to? Shifu, don't worry about the remaining quota. It's fine as long as you agree, Audiobook said. Mr. Wang Ming said he wants to go. Wang Ling was stunned. He understood the reasoning, but the problem was that Wang Ming didn't seem to be a student of number 60 high. This was a little too much. Audiobook seemed to have already considered Wang Ling's problem. Shifu, don't worry about this. Mr. Ming has previously used his identity as Wang Xiao to participate in the military training exercise for the 6 schools, so his student status is actually still at number 60 high. It's just that he's on suspension. Chapter 1493. Wang Ling suddenly felt that Audiobook had become a little bolder recently, but he had indeed never seen Audiobook beg him like this for someone before. For a moment, Wang Ling felt something tugging at his heartstrings, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. He felt that he should be able to understand. But every time this happened, Wang Ling felt as if his heart was being firmly gripped by a large invisible hand. That invisible hand was like a cage, crushing all of his emotions that were about to rise and fall into the turbulent but hidden undercurrent in his heart. Thus, Wang Ling often felt that he didn't understand. But it was as if Audiobook's request for Ryoko Kuya's sake could touch him, and he couldn't refuse it. Forget it, he would just treat it as a show of affection between master and disciple. Wang Ling's heart was actually very complicated, but he still found a reason to agree to Audiobook's request. Giving up all his strength for the person he liked, somehow, Wang Ling felt that this scene was a little familiar. During the joint military training exercise for the 6 schools last semester, the old devil had knelt before General Yi in front of everyone for the sake of his wife. To this day, Wang Ling still remembered that scene. It was as if that scene had been engraved in his mind, and he couldn't forget it. Perhaps he still needed a lot of time before he could truly understand that kind of action, but he still had a long road ahead of him. Who knew when he would be able to understand? Maybe 10 years? Maybe 20 years? Or maybe forever. Wang Ling smiled bitterly in his heart. He reached out to rub the curls on Audiobook's forehead, and he felt a warm current flow between his eyebrows into his head. It was as if Wang Ling had given him strength to fill up the reservoir of the 33 paths of primordial qi inside his body. At the same time, he told Audiobook some things in the hope that he would pay more attention to him while he was away from the country. Shifu, you agree? Audiobook was overjoyed and excited to the point of tears. The truth was that he hadn't thought that Wang Ling would definitely agree at first. After all, his request conflicted with Shifu's passion for a peaceful life. Going abroad as an exchange student was really too eye-catching. But Audiobook had in fact already thought of a remedy. This operation was a 2-way exchange between number 60 high and Sun Island. Given that other schools weren't involved, Audiobook could still temporarily block the news. After Audiobook left, Wang Ling waited in the bedroom for that man to appear. When the remote holographic projection appeared in the bedroom, Wang Ming's smiling face appeared in front of Wang Ling. Looking at Wang Ling's expression, the young man couldn't help laughing. I really didn't follow you on purpose this time. I really do have something important to do. He looked at Wang Ling and said, do you remember the Silverhorn DNA we investigated previously? Teacher Guoping is now an expert in this field. Although he couldn't find any DNA comparison data in the database, he's still determined that this silver horn person might be related to some aliens who illegally stayed on Earth on Sun Island. His judgment is the same as the result I got from hacking into the private database. Originally, this matter should have been handed over to Teacher Guoping, but isn't he too busy right now? Wang Ling looked at Wang Ming doubtfully. He knew this man too well. Even if he didn't read his mind, he knew that there must be another reason behind it. All right, I admit that there aren't many opportunities to travel at public expense. I've been cooped up in the country for too long. I just want to find an opportunity to go out and have some fun. Then what about Jai Yin? Wang Ling asked telepathically. You definitely won't be able to shake her off. She'll buy another plane ticket to follow us, said Wang Ming. At that moment, Loopy Toad, who had been lying on the ground in silence for a long time, lazily raised its eyelids and chuckled. I think this girl should like you. Be more confident, don't should. She just likes me, said Wang Ming. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad rolled its eyes. You already know that, but you're still hanging on to her? I'm doing this for her own good. Also, I think it's probably impossible for me and Jai Yin to be together, Wang Ming sighed. I used the brain deduction technique to calculate our compatibility, but it's really too low. There's only a very small chance that we'll end up together happily. Saying this, Wang Ming raised a finger. You only have a 10% chance? Asked Loopy Toad. Wang Ming shook his head. No, 10%. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, Wang Ming's smile gradually faded. Maybe I really am not the one she's destined to be with. If Jai Yin is with someone else, she might live a happier life. On the other side, news of the Sun Island student exchange program had also reached the Jiugong family. This was an internal communication between Jiugong Ryoko and the Jiugong family to release the news in advance. This was also a plan that Jiugong Ryoko and Odd Zhua had come up with after discussion. Is number 60 High going to send 3 students over, Ryoko? The person who spoke to Jiugong Ryoko was the Jiugong family's exclusive foreign affairs liaison officer, Luminous Immortal Kazuo. This was a tall old man with silver-white hair. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion, and didn't have the slightest wrinkle on his face. Yes, Uncle Ing. I'll send you the information on the 3 people and the teacher leading them, said Jiugong Ryoko. No problem, leave it to me. Don't worry, Miss Ryoko. I'll definitely contact the best school closest to the Jiugong family, and give our distinguished guests from afar the best experience. Luminous Immortal Kazuo smiled. By the way, Miss Ryoko, won't you take this opportunity to come home for a visit? The family head, Old Master and Old Madam miss you. This sounded like a test, and Jiugong Ryoko was silent for a moment before she replied with a smile. I haven't completely established myself in Huaxiao Nation yet, so I can't come back for the time being. Please don't worry, Grandpa and Mom and Dad. Also, I should be able to find out the whereabouts of that dead fish-eyed youngster very soon. Dead fish-eyed youngster? You mean the one who was seen by the Daycrawler ghost back then? That's right. Jiugong Ryoko said, I invested heavily in Master Shochong's research institute, and I believe that he'll soon be able to develop a tool that can smoothly find that youngster. The girl on the phone stopped telling her family that she was safe, and explained her various plans. But she didn't say that she had been poisoned by the world is full of dead fish eyes drug. After the announcement, Jiugong Ryoko hung up the phone and patted her flat chest with a sigh of relief. It's finally all settled. At that moment, she was still in Lotus Sun's bedroom. You're still looking for that dead fish-eyed youngster? After hearing Jiugong Ryoko's words, Lotus Sun asked, stifling a laugh in her heart. That's right. If it weren't for your drug, which causes me to look at other people with dead fish eyes, I might have found him long ago. Lotus Sun, I think you shouldn't be too obsessed with this. You might not be able to find him, Jiugong Ryoko said. No. After you and classmate Wang Ling go abroad, I'll definitely find him. Lotus Sun. Chapter 1494. Lotus Sun, this time. I really have to thank you. After receiving a definite answer, Jimiya Ryoko was finally a little relieved. "You're welcome, classmate Jimiya." Lotus-san smiled generously and sincerely. "I know you've always regarded me as your opponent. In fact, I've always been deeply honored to be chosen as your opponent, classmate Jimiya." Hearing this, Jimiya Ryoko immediately blushed. It had to be said that Lotus-san's psychological attack was indeed superb, and the so-called Lotus-san domain was in fact an enhanced and passive version of this psychological attack. As the future heir to Hwagwa Water Curtain Group, Old Man's son had trained Lotus-san in a comprehensive manner since she was a child. Observing one's words and body language and observing one's heart was in fact a business tactic. After Lotus-san confirmed that Jimiya Ryoko was different from Jiang Yingying and didn't really like Wang Ling, she had changed her strategy toward Jimiya Ryoko. From targeting her at the beginning to working together for a win-win situation now, it was all for the sake of helping Audiobook win over this beautiful girl of the plains as soon as possible. As it turned out, Lotus-san's move was indeed very effective. Don't misunderstand, classmate Lotus-san, this time, it's just a temporary cooperation. You'll always be my opponent. Jimiya Ryoko blushed. She tried to disguise herself as super fierce, but she didn't realize that when her big eyes widened, she actually looked very silly and adorable. Classmate Ryoko, you don't have to thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank Senior Audiobook. He was the one who arranged everything. I've never seen him beg anyone, said Lotus Sunday. Jimiya Ryoko crossed her arms and pursed her lips. Really, who asked him to meddle in other people's business? Although she said that, Lotus-san felt that it was more like a spoiled child. Also, I want to know if the two people traveling with classmate Lotus-san are reliable. Don't worry, classmate Ryoko, they're both on the same side. One is classmate Wang Ling, whom you've already met, and the other is Wang Shaoer, who's suspended from school. I know classmate Wang Ling, the one with the delicate features and dead fish eyes. Ryoko Kamiya shrugged. She didn't care too much about Wang Ling, because the effects of the drug hadn't worn off, and she looked at everyone with dead fish eyes. In contrast, she was actually more concerned about Wang Ming. By the way, who is this Wang Shaoer? What do you mean by saying that they're all on our side? Senior Audiobook didn't tell you? Lotus-san suddenly smiled. Student Wang Ling and student Wang Shaoer are actually his disciples. However, this matter has not been made public yet, so I hope that classmate Yoshiko can keep it a secret. He has a disciple? Yes. Lotus-san said, Senior Audiobook is so awesome, of course he has to choose the right person to inherit his mantle. I see. Hearing this, Komiya Ryoko showed an expression of sudden realization and nodded like a chick pecking at rice. By the way, does classmate Yoshiko still suspect Senior Audiobook? He's a man of genuine ability and learning, Lotus-san asked deliberately. I just feel that it's necessary to take a look. Senior Audiobook is a good man. And in terms of age, it shouldn't be a problem for you, Lotus-san said deliberately. I'm underage. Komiya Ryoko emphasized. Oh, that's right, I almost forgot, classmate Yoshiko is the same age as me. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but Komiya Ryoko suddenly realized that Lotus-san always seemed to be implying something. The girl in front of her was much scarier than she had imagined. The Sun Island exchange program had actually been proposed by the Komiya family from the very beginning, and could be considered Komiya Ryoko's plan to prevent internal strife in the family. In fact, this plan had always been in the process of being implemented, and could be activated at any time at Komiya Ryoko's command. No one had expected Komiya Ryoko to be so meticulous at such a young age, and she hadn't expected her plan to be put to use so soon. If it was possible. Komiya Ryoko hoped that she would never have to use this plan for the rest of her life. That night, Komiya Ryoko closed her eyes as she tossed and turned in bed, thinking about a lot of things. She didn't know how much time had passed before she finally fell asleep. In her dream, she found herself walking on the surface of a frozen lake. A snowstorm blocked her view. For a moment, Komiya Ryoko found that she couldn't see the road in front of her clearly. The faces under her feet were smiling at her at first, but then they suddenly turned into ghosts and leaped out of the frozen lake, turning into all kinds of ferocious forms and pouncing on her. This dream again. This wasn't the first time Kwamiya Ryoko had dreamed of such a nightmarish scene. She silently stood in the snowstorm, watching these ghostly faces attack her body. She let them turn into masks that were difficult to tear off, layer by layer, covering her pure white face. She didn't know when it started, but she began to find that her family had become more and more complicated. When she was young, the big, happy family that had been so warm that it could melt everything in her heart, gradually began to be overshadowed by all kinds of dark undercurrents. She didn't know when it started, but Kwamiya Ryoko found that her smile began to lessen. She began to learn to disguise, to fake a smile, and to put on the cold face of society to deal with all the difficulties in front of her. She seemed to have become what she hated the most. All the changes, all the helplessness, made Kwamiya Ryoko like a bird frightened by the mere twang of a bough. She lived carefully, as if walking on thin ice, and in this doomsday scene, Kwamiya Ryoko walked for a long time. It should be over soon. She estimated the time of this nightmare in her heart, feeling that she was about to wake up. But what the girl didn't expect was, for the first time, her doomsday nightmare actually had a follow-up, at this time, just as she walked alone on the ice, enduring the impact of the snowstorm and the ghostly faces. A ray of light suddenly pierced through the scene in front of her. In an instant, the snowstorm dissipated, and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. The sun shone on the frozen lake, and those annoying ghostly faces all evaporated one by one, completely disappearing. Classmate Ryoko. The familiar voice made Kwamiya Ryoko instantly look in the direction of the voice. And at the end of the voice was a man standing on the riverbank, waving at her and smiling at her. At that moment, Kwamiya Ryoko felt as if her heart had been struck by something. Like shedding dead skin, the facial makeup on her face peeled off her cheeks layer by layer, and then turned into fine powder. Ah joie, she looked at the person in front of her in disbelief, and was about to step forward when the dreams suddenly shrank. When Kwamiya Ryoko woke up, it was already the next morning. After waking up, the girl hugged her knees like a frightened little hedgehog, and trembled as she curled up on the bed for a long time. She had actually dreamed of Ah joie. She was crazy. Chapter 1495. On Monday the 14th of December, 2 people from number 60 High School's Grade 1, Class 3 were absent. One was Wang Ling, and the other was Lotus Sunday. Among those in number 60 High School who knew that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were about to leave the country, there were actually Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen, and the others. They were now core members of Battle's sect, so they could still find out. According to Teacher Pan's official explanation, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were sick, so they needed to rest at home for a while. If it was anyone else who disappeared, there probably wouldn't be too many people paying attention, but when these two disappeared together, people's imaginations ran wild. Sick together? And applying to rest at home at the same time? The rest of the class might believe this, but Super Chen and Hirogwa didn't believe it so easily. No way, it really happened? The two buffoons looked at each other with marvelous expressions on their faces. On the ancient street of cultivation culture, they had slipped away in advance and deliberately left some space for themselves. They had thought that they would make some progress, but who would have thought that it would be so fast? In just 2 days, they were already in the hospital. Abortion, they immediately thought of a scene that often appeared in TV dramas. Hirogwa, Li Yue, and Super Chen had set up the Ling Rong Assist discussion group. They were discussing the situation enthusiastically. You guys are too dirty. What are you thinking? Who says that going to the hospital has to be an abortion? Besides, how can it be so fast? Li Yue said crossly. Then if it's not an abortion, is it possible that Wang Ling couldn't restrain himself and wanted to be a beast for once, and then someone found out and broke his leg? Even Hirogwa himself didn't quite believe it when he said this. The probability of this indifferent piece of wood becoming a beast was almost zero. If he had, he would have done it long ago. Back at the Shao family compound, they had plenty of opportunities to be alone. I don't think Ling Zi is the kind of man who would do that kind of thing. At that moment, Superchin suddenly typed, but the two of them disappearing at the same time and taking sick leave is indeed a little interesting. I think there's more to it than meets the eye, said Li Yuyue. The main reason was that the three of them had sent private messages to Wang Ling or Lotus Sun asking about the situation, but hadn't received any replies. This situation was indeed a little inconceivable. However, they knew Old Pan very well. As a meticulous gold medal teacher, Old Pan basically wouldn't help others lie to them. From the looks of it, someone more senior than Old Pan must have planned and organized something, and then called Wang Ling and Lotus Sun out. Could it be studying abroad? At that moment, Superchin suddenly said, I remember that when foreign students came to our school in the past, there seemed to be a student exchange program. Isn't there going to be a new student in our class this time? It's possible. When Hiro Gua and Li Yuyue saw Superchen's words, they immediately nodded like chicks pecking at rice. So you're saying, they're actually on a honeymoon abroad? Li Yuyue's mouth twitched. At that moment, Hiro Gua couldn't help laughing. Honeymoon is an exaggeration. Can you call it a honeymoon when it comes to cultured people? That's called learning. Li Yuyue said, yes, yes, yes. Study. He. Superchin chimed in. He. After some discussion, Superchin and the others seemed to have an answer. They were Wang Ling's best brothers, and even if they knew something, they would only rot in their stomachs and wouldn't say a word. However, Superchin and the others weren't the only ones who had doubts about this matter. On this day, Jiang Yingying wasn't in a good mood either. She looked anxiously at Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's empty seats, and felt that something was up. When school was almost over, Jiang Yingying used the same trick again and blocked Superchin and Hiro Gua at the school gate. Classmate Jiang, please let me go, I really don't know where Lingzi is. Hiro Gua raised his hands in surrender, while Superchin loyally stepped forward and shielded little fatty Gua behind him. I know that you have a good impression of Lingzi, but there are times when you really can't force things. As Wang Ling's best brother, your behavior isn't just troubling for us, it's also troubling for classmate Wang Ling. Superchin spoke very seriously, and Jiang Yingying stared blankly at him. The girl lowered her head, her face flushed red. She was probably embarrassed and was reflecting on herself. Seeing Jiang Yingying's nose twitch as if tears were going to fall in the next second, Superchin hurriedly relaxed his tone and said as gently as he could, actually. Classmate Jiang Yingying, I've always wanted to ask, do you really like classmate Wang Ling? Jiang Yingying's mind instantly blanked at these words. Of course no, what I want to ask is, do you like Lingzi's literary talent, or do you like him? Superchin smiled. Although I've been single for a long time, I more or less know a little about relationships. At our age, it's actually very easy to mistake good feelings, friendship, worship and the like for like. You just read one of Lingzi's essays and said you like him, so I think classmate Jiang Yingying should consider this carefully. Jiang Yingying was instantly speechless, and for a moment, she actually didn't know how to refute Superchen's words. It's fine, classmate Jiang, you don't have to answer me now. My questions are only because I am your son's brother, and I am asking you some questions. They're just some immature little questions, said Superchin. Actually, Superchin himself didn't know why, but his mouth seemed to be getting better and better at talking, especially since the beginning of this semester. It seemed that his ability to organize his words had been strengthened. To be more precise, it should be after the math class with the new vice principal, teacher Hu Ding, had started, Jiang Yingying was powerless to answer the series of questions. She stopped asking about Wang Ling's situation, and with a slightly dazed expression on her face, she walked to the bus station. Aren't you going too far? Superchin frowned and was a little worried. Let's follow behind and send classmate Jiang Yingying back first. Her condition is indeed worrying, said Hiro Gua. Just like that, the two of them discussed and secretly followed Jiang Yingying. At that moment, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were going through the relevant procedures to go abroad at the same place. Because he had to be present in person, Wang Ling had no choice but to participate in this matter himself. Actually, this wasn't Wang Ling's first time going abroad. The main thing was that it was his first time going abroad according to the official procedures, because he had habitually used teleportation before. Theoretically speaking, Wang Ling had already entered other countries illegally several times. Furthermore, he had repeatedly jumped around, and no one could do anything to him. Huaxiao Cultivation Entry-Exit Administration. At that moment, Wang Ling, who was taking a passport photo, ran into a new problem. Classmate Wang Ling, can you smile for a bit? The female police officer who was taking the passport photo raised her SLR camera and looked at Wang Ling as she asked. Wang Ling grinned. The female police officer didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why do you smile like you're crying? Wang Ling, female police officer, come, copy me, isn't Kuxuan handsome? Wang Ling, female police officer, don't keep silent, just copy me. I'll take the photo. Wang Ling, but I can't lie, female police officer. Chapter 1496. Almost all of Wang Ling's ID photos had a dead look on his face, as if he had nothing left to live for and had yet to wake up. He lacked the temperament of a sunny teenager, which was probably a problem that was hard for Wang Ling to change. This had directly led to him being labeled a melancholy teenager since he was young, which was different from that kind of abstinence. Who knew if it was because of his dead fish eyes, which directly made him look a little hollow. In junior high, Wang Ling remembered that he had been given a very excessive nickname, Young Master Kidney Deficiency. Wang Ling didn't know where this nickname had come from. But he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this kind of childish behavior. Essentially, giving people nicknames in school was also a kind of violent behavior. But the truth was that the nickname incident in junior high didn't last long. At that time, a lot of people really felt that Wang Ling was weak, and deliberately ran over to pick on him to bully him. For example, when Wang Ling was in the bathroom, they would rush out of the single cubicle in the back and violently take pictures of him. For example, when Wang Ling was in the bathroom, they would rush out of the single cubicle in the back and violently take pictures of him. This guy could really be called Young Master Kidney Deficiency? Which Young Master Kidney Deficiency could grow into a space-cracking throne. After another 10 minutes or so, the female police officer finally gave up completely, just like those photographers who had been keen on taking smiling ID photos. Such a good-looking young man was actually an autistic teenager, what a pity. She stared at Wang Ling's ID photo with his paralyzed face and sighed emotionally in her heart. In fact, not all police officers who took ID photos had this kind of patience. On one hand, it was because they were relatively free today, and on the other hand, this female police officer actually liked Wang Ling. Overflowing with maternal instincts was probably a common problem for women. When she saw Wang Ling, it was as if she was looking at her own son. They were also about the same age. I think it's pretty good. On the side, Lotus Sun was overjoyed, and instead thought that Wang Ling was very cute. Pretty good? The female police officer laughed. Sure enough, beauty was in the eye of the beholder. The next person to take an ID photo was Lotus Sunday. In fact, Lotus Sun had had a passport for a long time. In addition to taking a new passport photo, she had also come to apply for an extension. Sorry to trouble you, police officer sister. Facing the camera, the girl's performance was very natural and natural. Her smile was not stiff at all, just like those celebrity models who were used to taking photos. This ID photo was taken smoothly and was far smoother than Wang Ling's. The young girl's skin was so good that even the policewoman was envious. She clearly hadn't retouched the photo, but it was as if she had turned on a beauty filter. While helping Lotus Sun make a new passport, the policewoman glanced at the old photo on Lotus Sun's passport. Then, he was shocked by the dazzling array of stamps from various countries on the passport. Wow, you've been to so many places. In the end, she was the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group and had seen a lot of the world. The female police officer sighed inwardly. Money really limited people's imagination to a large extent. Perhaps most people would never be able to experience what the life of a rich person was like in their lifetime. In the process, Wang Ling saw the photo in Lotus Sun's old passport. The Lotus Sun in the passport was an adorable little girl. You already had a passport in primary school. Wang Ling was startled. No wonder Lotus Sun had specially come over today to replace the photo. The difference between primary school and high school wasn't insignificant. And for some reason, staring at this photo of Lotus Sun as a primary school student, Wang Ling felt a sense of familiarity in his mind. It was as if he and Lotus Sun had met by accident a long time ago, but that memory had already become blurry. Wang Ling guessed that it might have been a casual encounter. As a result, he and Lotus Sun hadn't noticed each other. By the time everything was ready, it was already close to evening. The boarding time was on Tuesday, December 15th, which was 8:00 tomorrow morning. As soon as he stepped out, he saw Audrey obediently waiting at the door in his own car. This was Audrey's private car, and it could already be considered a relatively low-key model. Today, Audrey had actually taken Wang Ling and Lotus Sun around all day to go through all kinds of procedures. The passport was already the last step. Logically speaking, the issuance of passports actually wouldn't be that fast, but with Audrey's official involvement, they had gone through the green channel. It was the same for visas. As long as Audrey, number 60 high school, and the Jugong family on Sun Island got in touch, there wouldn't be any problems with visas. It could be said that everything was ready now, except for the final push. As Wang Ling and Lotus Sun approached the car, Wang Ling suddenly noticed the dainty Jugong Ryoko sitting in the front passenger seat through the window. The girl had changed into her very familiar gothic dark clothes. She crossed her arms and frowned, and no one knew what she was thinking. "Come, my disciple, get in the car." Audrey greeted Wang Ling enthusiastically with a smile on his face. Wang Ling sighed silently. He wasn't angry. In any case, it was all an act for now. Since Audrey had helped him so much, Wang Ling didn't think it was a loss for him to be called his disciple. Furthermore, he also hoped that Audrey and Jugong Ryoko would really become a couple. This girl Jugong wasn't easy to deal with. If she became an enemy, it would be very troublesome. Opening the car door, Wang Ling stood obediently to one side and politely let Lotus Sun take the seat first. Then, he got in from the other side. Jugong Ryoko glanced at Wang Ling through the rearview mirror, and seemed a little dissatisfied with this disciple. "You're such a rude disciple. You don't even greet your shifu." Holding the steering wheel, Audrey's foot trembled when he heard Jugong Ryoko's question. Halfway through the car, he abruptly slammed on the brakes, causing Jugong Ryoko's head to bump forward. Aya. Jugong Ryoko was hit, but because she was wearing a seatbelt, it didn't hurt much, and she was just a little frightened. "Can you drive?" "If you can't, I'll drive." She felt aggrieved. Every time this happened, Jugong Ryoko would think of her disappointing flatland. If it was big enough, it would be 2 airbags. It would be good to cushion it. "You'll drive? Are you an adult?" Audrey chuckled. It sounded like a casual remark, but there was in fact a hidden meaning behind it. Behind the scenes, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun could vaguely hear it. They all knew what Jugong Ryoko's secret was. Audrey hadn't said it on purpose, he just felt that Jugong Ryoko was a little hostile toward Wang Ling, so he had said something quick-witted to make Jugong Ryoko pay attention to it. Sure enough, after he said it, the girl in the front passenger seat became a lot more well-behaved. She just turned her face away and looked out the window, as if she was sulking. In fact, she was also conflicted in her heart about whether Audrey had discovered her secret. But what I said just now was probably unintentional. Jugong Ryoko comforted herself on the way. "Junior sister Lotus Sun, you have to leave first thing in the morning tomorrow. Tonight, it's my treat. What do you want to eat?" Audrey asked after the atmosphere had turned awkward and the car was silent for dozens of seconds. "Wang Ling and I are fine," Lotus Sun replied with a smile. She knew that Wang Ling wasn't a picky eater, so she didn't have to worry about what he ate. In any case, with Wang Ling's physique, it was really hard for him to get fat. Even if he ate too much, he could rub it off. "Okay, I know a good barbecue place." Audrey nodded, then turned to look at the sulking girl next to him. "What about classmate Jugong?" Can you take it? Who wants to eat barbecue? They'll get fat. Jogong Ryoko murmured. Classmate Jogong is already so thin, why are you afraid of getting fat? I don't think it's a big deal for a girl to get a little fat, as long as the fat goes where it belongs, Audra said with a smile. Hearing this, Jogong Ryoko's eyes instantly lit up, but then she quickly calmed down. The girl snorted and turned her head to look out the window. Whatever you want, the atmosphere had probably been saved. Seeing this scene, Audra breathed a sigh of relief in his heart and couldn't help sighing at his own difficulties. Shifu and his wife were in the back seat, and his future wife was next to him. This was indeed a lot of pressure. After all, he and Jogong would really be together in the future. In addition to that father-in-law who had been flirting everywhere, there were still 6 mothers-in-law in front of him. The 4 of them arrived at the barbecue place without a hitch. Audra didn't want to reveal his identity in public, so he wore sunglasses and a cap that kept his hair down. Jogong Ryoko was amused by his comical getup. After taking a seat, Jogong Ryoko suddenly realized a problem. That classmate Wang Xiao and senior Golden Lamp, aren't they coming? They'll meet up at Songhai International Boat Yard tomorrow morning. Don't worry about them, Audra said. The main reason was that Wang Ming's approval to go abroad was more troublesome. Although Audra was already doing his best to coordinate, whether or not Wang Ming could ultimately go abroad still depended on the old secretary and President Qi's approval. After all, Wang Ming's job this time was to investigate aliens, which could be done even if Wang Ming wasn't needed. There were so many alien experts and scholars at the Magic Treasure Academy of Science, so it didn't really matter who they sent. The authorities were still worried that if Wang Ming's true identity was leaked and he was abroad, they might find an excuse to forcibly detain him. Although the probability of this happening was relatively small, it was still a potential risk that needed to be assessed. But Wang Ling himself was quite calm about this matter. With the Great Fortune spell, he knew that Wang Ming wouldn't be in trouble if he went through the vetting process. During the food order segment, a graceful waitress walked over from a distance with a tray in her hands. She placed the iced lemonade on the tray in front of everyone. My name is Aya. This is the complimentary iced lemonade. If you need it, you can call me for a refill at any time. The waitress called Aya smiled. Then, she looked at Audra. Sir, you look a little familiar. Is that so? Audra pushed up his sunglasses and smiled awkwardly. Audra glanced at Kamiya Ryoko indifferently and noticed that the girl's eyes were densely packed with thorns. Excuse me, are you Mr. Audra? In fact, when she saw the loose curls on Audra's forehead, the waitress had already confirmed Audra's identity. As if on purpose, Aya kept her upper body very low. Even with his sunglasses on, Audra could see the 2 eye-catching meatballs hanging from the waitress's chest, which looked like white flour. This barbecue restaurant was one of Audra's regular customers. Although he usually tried to disguise himself, most of the waitresses in the restaurant knew it was him, and usually wouldn't make such a big fuss about nothing. This Aya was clearly new, and for a moment, Audra felt a little helpless. Since he had already been recognized, he could only admit it. So Audra took off his sunglasses and made a shushing gesture at Aya. You're right, but I hope you can keep your voice down, I understand. The waitress looked excited. It was only at that moment that Kamiya Ryoko realized that she seemed to have underestimated Audra's popularity. To be recognized in a public place while in disguise, he was really like a celebrity. Furthermore, most of the people who could recognize him were true fans, who had been following him for a long time. This Aya didn't stand on ceremony. She took out her phone on the spot, set it to selfie mode, and then set the beauty level to the highest. That. Mr. Audra, can I take a photo with you? She was very obedient and didn't disturb the other diners. She kept her voice very low, shy and a little numb, and then pretended to pull up the collar of her uniform. This scene immediately caused Wang Ling to obediently turn his face away. On the side, Lotus Sun watched this scene as if she were watching a play, and at the same time, she was very satisfied with Wang Ling's indecent gaze. In fact, Wang Ling also didn't know why he had turned his face away. Maybe it was out of a straight man's instinct, but he felt that he should turn around. "Sorry, it's not convenient for me to take a photo with you." Audra smiled at the waitress and refused. In fact, he had never refused this kind of thing before. Unfortunately, with the alliance election at hand, he needed to be extra careful. After all, he was currently very well known nationwide. Taking a photo with him wasn't a big deal, but he was afraid that people with ulterior motives would use it to do bad things. For example, a year ago, a restaurant owner had used a photo of Audra to advertise that he was his relative, in order to drum up business. After that incident, Audra had actually been more careful and rarely took photos with others. "Can't I?" This waitress called Aya looked disappointed when her request was turned down. She gently rubbed her foot against Audra's leg. "If you don't mind, I can sign instead." The corners of Audra's lips curled up slightly. Actually, he knew what this Aya was up to. However, he could resist temptation. This was in itself a test for cadres. Audra considered himself a person with strong self-control. It wasn't like he had never experienced a situation like this before. It would actually be very easy to get rid of this waitress. But that wasn't what he was focused on. He was more curious about Jogong's attitude and reaction. The truth was that at that moment, Jogong Ryoko's expression was already very ugly. The girl's face was overcast, and coupled with her dark gothic gown, she looked like a witch in an ancient castle. Even if she didn't say anything, Lotus Sun could sense that Jogong Ryoko wanted to skin this waitress alive. "Odd brother Joie, I've always been your fan, I beg you, just one. Is that all right? I promise I won't tell anyone." But it seemed that this waitress wanted to waste time with Audra. She spoke in an arrogant and delicate voice and didn't think anything of Jogong Ryoko at all. At that moment, Audra actually couldn't take it anymore. He was about to respond to this matter with a serious attitude. In the end, Audra hadn't expected Jogong Ryoko to be the first to restrain herself. The girl's back was ramrod straight. She was clearly sitting down, but there was a condescending air about her. "Mr. Joie said that it's not convenient to take a photo together. Is it fun to waste time? I just want to take a photo together, can't I? Why do you care so much?" After being questioned, Aya showed an aggrieved expression instead. Sitting upright, Jogong Ryoko had a contemptuous expression on her face. "We're here to eat. If this young lady wants to show off her charm, you can go somewhere else. After all, there's something dirty when you eat, which will affect your appetite." Her words were too blunt. Audra was stupefied. Lotus Sun secretly marveled at how brilliant this was. Wang Ling, on the other hand, fixed his gaze on the "see no indecent things" position from before. In this world, there was only one kind of war that Wang Ling might never be able to participate in. And that was a war between women. For some reason, Jogong Ryoko's aura seemed to instantly magnify. She was clearly only at the foundation establishment stage, but her boldness wasn't inferior to that of a soul formation cultivator. "What do you mean?" Aya looked like she had hit a sore spot, and the expression on her face was very unsightly. "I don't mean anything else. I just mean that you should go somewhere else and clean up that mess." Jogong Ryoko faked a smile and pretended to glance lightly at the waitress's lower body. This was, in a split second, the waitress felt that something wasn't quite right with her situation. Because it just so happened that her period had come at this time. The tables had turned, and Aya instantly squeezed her legs together and fled in a panic. "That's it?" Looking at the waitress's disheveled back, Jogong Ryoko snorted. "Classmate Ryoko, what did you do?" Lotus Sun couldn't help laughing. "Nothing." Jogong Ryoko shook her head and said. She couldn't be bothered to continue arguing with this flirtatious girl in front of her, because that would only attract more attention. Fortunately, she used the power of the copy of the ghost register. Because the truth about the riot hadn't come to light yet, Jogong Ryoko knew that it was actually risky for her to do so. But she hadn't been able to restrain herself just now, Thus, she summoned a little brat called Excavator, and tampered with it a little. This little thing wasn't fatal, it would just bleed a little as a warning, and then it would be like she was on her period. Excavator. Wang Ling hadn't been deliberately reading her mind, he had just happened to hear it. He instantly broke out in a cold sweat, and once again felt how terrifying girls could be. Because Aya had gone to take care of her personal hygiene, the shop had switched over a male waiter to serve their table. They didn't have to roast the meat themselves, the waiter had been professionally trained and knew exactly how long it took to roast different parts of the meat. Seeing that the new waiter was called Little Light, Jugong Ryoko instantly felt a lot more at ease. She didn't regret what she had done just now. If that Aya hadn't left, she would have roasted the meat in front of Odd Zhuo while acting coquettishly. Just thinking about it made Jugong Ryoko feel a little nauseous. In comparison, the male waiter was much better. The waiter just buried his head in roasting the meat, and then divided it evenly among everyone's plates, remaining silent the whole time. If there was no contrast, there was no harm. Jugong Ryoko was so satisfied with the waiter that she wanted to tip him herself. As she chatted and laughed with Lotus Sun and Odd Zhuo, Jugong Ryoko suddenly noticed that the waiter was roasting an oxtail. His movements were very skillful. Who knew how many times he had been roasted before to have such experience? After being smeared with a special sauce, the oxtail was roasted fragrantly. Jugong Ryoko blinked as she looked forward to the waiter cutting off the tail after it was cooked. In the end, the waiter directly picked up an entire oxtail and put it directly on Odd Zhuo's plate. "Mr. Zhuo, try this. This is our shop's signature roasted oxtail. It's a special gift." Odd Zhuo was puzzled. A gift? This waiter called Little Light blushed endlessly. "Actually, I'm also a fan of Mr. Zhuo. I've been following you for a long time. I've always liked you very much." The waiter rubbed his head and smiled foolishly. Was this a confession? Or was it a boy? Wang Ling was so scared that he dropped his chopsticks. "Classmate Wang Ling, don't move. I'll help you pick them up." Lotus Sun was also very frightened. When she bent down to help Wang Ling pick up his chopsticks, she noticed that under the table, Jugong Ryoko had once again deftly flipped through that copy of the ghost book. She instantly had a premonition of this waiter's fate. Sure enough, this waiter called Little Light very quickly ran off to take care of his own business. Even a man? Lotus Sun was completely shocked. "It's all the same, one's great aunt and one's great uncle," Jugong Ryoko said indifferently. In her heart, she cursed Odd Zhuo for finding this lousy shop. It really had all kinds of demons and ghosts. Wang Ling and Odd Zhuo, and then, there was no and then. After experiencing Aya and Little Light, Jugong Ryoko started to be extremely vigilant of the waiters who deliberately approached their table. It looked like everyone was there to confess. Anyone who approached their table and their gaze lingered on Odd Zhuo for more than 10 seconds would be sent off by Jugong Ryoko to take care of their own business. Jugong Ryoko wasn't in the mood to eat, and her eyes were like searchlights as she looked around. She had thought that no waiter would dare approach them, but at that moment, she saw a smiling old man walking toward them from a distance. The girl looked at Odd Zhuo in astonishment. She had never thought that even an old man would be attracted to him. Smiling wasn't a good thing. "Forget it, let's send them off together." "Classmate Ryoko, wait." At that moment, Odd Zhuo, who had already seen through the girl's little trick, suddenly spoke up to stop her. "Jugong Ryoko, question mark. Odd Zhuo, this person is the shop manager, I already know him." Jugong Ryoko, "No way, but I'm already." At this point, the old shop manager was already walking toward them. "I'm sorry, Mr. Zhuo, I don't know what's going on in my shop. It seems that everyone has a little problem today." Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Odd Zhuo and Jugong Ryoko, Aya, the newcomer in our shop, and Little Light, the one who came to serve you before, are actually boyfriend and girlfriend. I knew you were coming, so I arranged for this young couple, who are both your fans, to serve you. I didn't expect young people nowadays to be so frail and sickly. Speaking up to this point, the shop manager's expression suddenly changed. Odd Zhuo had a bad feeling. What's wrong? The shop manager, I'm sorry. I have to go as well to take care of my own business, Audiobook. Chapter 1497. Wang Ling realized that there seemed to be a lot of strange ghosts in the ghost record. After all, this ghost record was the foundation of the entire Jiugong family for 100 years. The ghost called excavator. It was in fact a collective vengeful spirit. It was mainly made up of billions of descendants, who had been wrapped in toilet paper and flushed down the toilet by the boys on countless lonely nights. Only a few of them had become small vengeful spirits, which wasn't something to be afraid of. But at some point, they had accumulated into an ocean. This extremely frightening ghost had been created. In urban legends around the world, there were sometimes people who had unexplained blood in their stool or urine when they went to the toilet. The root cause was this collective vengeful spirit. Decades ago, the Jiugong family had captured this thing and given it a code name, excavator. And this was the origin of this ghost. After dinner, Audiobook left some cash at the front desk. The main reason was that almost everyone in the shop had gone to deal with their personal problems, and even the bill collector had disappeared. He deliberately gave more as an apology on Jiugong Ryoko's behalf. Since his future wife had made a mistake, it was only right for him to give the shop manager a token of appreciation. In fact, although Jiugong Ryoko didn't say anything about her rash behavior, she was actually deeply sorry in her heart. She had even felt that she had been a little neurotic. Nothing like this had ever happened before. But now, Jiugong Ryoko realized, whenever it involved Audiobook, she would always lose her rationality bit by bit, and lose her calm judgment. She thought of Audiobook waving at her on the other side of the frozen lake after the snowstorm in her dream last night, his face radiant with sunshine. The girl's face involuntarily turned a little hot. She sent Wang Ling and Lotus Sun back separately. In the passenger seat, the girl who looked like she was taking a nap with her eyes closed suddenly made a growling sound in her stomach. The scene was a little awkward. Tonight's dinner had been too noisy, and Jiugong Ryoko hadn't had a good meal. Furthermore, because she had overused the ghost, she had become even hungrier than before. Jiugong Ryoko had wanted to put up with it for a little longer, and order a midnight snack when they got home. But her stomach had failed to live up to her expectations at that moment. Hungry? Audiobook raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you want to go for a midnight snack with me?" Komiya Ryoko knew that Audiobook must have noticed that she was pretending to sleep. After thinking for a while, he opened his eyes. Roadside stalls are not clean. Who said I'm taking you to eat at roadside stalls? Audiobook said, I can make it for you myself. Komiya Ryoko was surprised to hear this. You can cook? Of course. When I was in the basic army, I worked in the cookhouse for a while. Audiobook smiled confidently and said, of course, it's a little late now. If you want to go back and rest, I can send you back now. If you want supper, follow me to the staff apartment. But I'm afraid it'll be midnight by the time we finish this supper. It's not good for the development of underage girls. These words made Ryoko Kuya silent. She swallowed the saliva in her mouth. She didn't know if it was because she was looking forward to Audiobook's cooking or because she was really hungry, but she felt a little conflicted. You've always been a straightforward person. Is it really that difficult to make a decision? Holding the steering wheel, Audiobook withdrew his gaze and deliberately didn't look at Komiya Ryoko's red face. Or is it because you heard that we're going to my apartment that you thought of something else? Hearing this, Ryoko stared blankly. Since Audiobook had already said this, if she still didn't go, it would seem like she had a guilty conscience. So she folded her arms, rolled her eyes at Audiobook, and looked at him with her shapely eyebrows furrowed. Let's go, I'm not afraid of you. Okay. As a master planner, Audiobook was of course overjoyed to see that his fishing strategy had succeeded. In fact, it was only after Ryoko agreed that she realized she had been tricked by Audiobook again. She didn't know why, but Audiobook always seemed to be able to provoke that chord in her heart. But Komiya Yoshiko still refused to admit this matter verbally. Even though she seemed to already have the answer in her heart. But between her and Audiobook, Perhaps they could only be close friends at most, and there was no possibility of them going any further. Every time she thought of this, Ryoko's mood was like a ball of tangled cotton thread, extremely messy. The pressure from the family behind her might have already drawn a line between her and Audjua. Following Audjua to the staff apartment, Ryoko was shocked by where Audjua lived. It wasn't that it was gorgeous, but that everything was too clean. The wooden floor was spotless, there was a fragrance in the air, and all the smooth surfaces were so shiny that they reflected light, as if they had just been wiped. But what surprised Ryoko the most was Audjua's obsessive-compulsive neatness. The books on the bookshelves, the pendants on the walls, the knickknacks on the countertop, not only were the colors uniform, even the placement of everything was clearly at the same level. It was simply cleaner and more beautiful than her villa. As a man's bedroom, Ryoko thought it was a little outrageous. How did the saying go? If it was clean and tidy without any smell, it was either a trap or gay. You live alone? Ryoko asked. Of course. Audjua nodded and couldn't help smiling. I want to find a wife to keep me company, but someone has to be willing to marry me. As he said this, Audjua was pouring lemonade for Ryoko. He deliberately didn't look at the girl's expression, because he knew that she was definitely blushing out of embarrassment. Did you clean the house by yourself? Didn't you call the cleaner or something? Ryoko took the cup from Audjua and didn't dare look him in the eye. You know what I do. Sometimes, due to work reasons, I might bring some information back. So it's not safe to call the cleaner. There's a risk of leaks. Audjua smiled and said, it's just cleaning, it's not like I don't have hands and feet. There were in fact a lot of cleaning talismans on the market now, and with them, it wouldn't be too tiring for Audjua to clean alone. Audjua's family wasn't bad to begin with, and he had always pursued a clean, orderly and ritualistic life. It wasn't that Audjua did a good job, it was just that he was a little more particular than many boys. But there was a saying, gold or silver, there was no place like your own kennel. No matter what your home was like, whether it was messy or clean, as long as you lived happily, outsiders naturally had no right to interfere. In order to live a better life, the struggling, young waves worked hard from dawn to dusk every day, and they were already tired enough. As for whether or not he wanted to keep his home as spotless as his own, Audjua felt that it was purely his own choice. He couldn't use the same standard to restrict everyone. After all, everyone's conditions were different. There were many ways to live life. It was fine as long as he could enjoy himself, and he didn't need to care about what other people thought. What are you going to make for me for supper? I'll make it for you. Ryoko pretended not to understand. Don't tell me you're talking about instant noodles. Why don't you come and see for yourself? Audjua smiled. At that moment, Ryoko could already hear the clanking of pots and pans coming from the kitchen. Curious, she walked into the kitchen and saw that Audjua was rolling noodles. Supper was actually handmade hand-rolled noodles. The thick and big rolling pin rolled the dough back and forth. After pushing it into a thin piece of cake, Komiya Ryoko saw a familiar emerald green light flash. In the blink of an eye, the dough had been cut into noodles of the same thickness and length. It had to be said that Audjua's knife skills were too exquisite, as if they had been processed by a machine. The key was that the edges of the noodles were actually stained with a faint green bamboo color. At that moment, Audjua said, "This is hand-rolled bamboo noodles, which I recently figured out. Even my disciple hasn't eaten it before." Ryoko was skeptical. Bamboo noodles, so that emerald spirit light just now couldn't have been. That's right, it was my spirit sword, cut. You used a spirit sword to cut noodles? Actually, my knife skills aren't bad, and it's about the same as cut. But aren't you hungry? It's more convenient to cut it in advance. Audjua smiled warmly. Also, the pre-cut dough has a fresh and elegant bamboo scent, and it also has the effect of removing oil and resisting sugar. Noodles are high in sugar and are taboo when it comes to weight loss. But with this, you don't have to worry about getting fat no matter how much you eat. Ryoko instantly understood. Audjua had actually done this for her own good. It could fill the stomach and wouldn't make her fat. For supper, this bamboo noodles could simply be called perfect. In order to dispel Ryoko's doubts about his knife skills, Audra left out a hand when it came to cutting the ingredients for the hand-rolled noodles. Holding the kitchen knife, the knife moved rhythmically like a shadow on the chopping board. In a short while, the shredded cucumbers and carrots were cut and placed together, their alluring color greatly increasing one's appetite. While the noodles were cooking, Audra started another pot to prepare the special minced meat sauce for the bamboo noodles. Audra was astonishingly proficient in these movements. If Ryoko hadn't seen it with her own eyes today, she wouldn't have believed that Audra actually had this side to him. In modern cultivation society, a man who could cook and knew how to cook was a plus. She felt that Audra, who was meticulously cooking the bamboo noodles, was glowing from head to toe. "You actually know how to cook, I told you, I worked in the basic kitchen for a while." Audra smiled. He really didn't need to lie about this. His experience in the basic army back then was in fact far richer than Ryoko could imagine. The army's iron discipline, strict military management, and all kinds of training, whether it was spirit sword training, long-range magic weapon training, physical training, or cookouts. These were things he would never forget for the rest of his life. Experience points were always effective. For Audra, those experiences back then were the best training ground for him to become a man from a boy. And it was precisely because of those experiences. When Loopy Toad had suddenly descended on the human world 6 years ago, Audra had still charged to the front line despite knowing the gap in their battle strength. He had known that he might die. But he had still charged forward without hesitation. Thinking about it now, Audra sometimes felt that perhaps Wang Ling agreeing to accept him as a disciple back then had been a plus. After the vegetables and minced meat sauce were ready, Audra poured all the ingredients into the pot and began to mix the noodles. After stirring for 2 minutes, he carried the pot to the dining table. "So much, are you feeding pigs?" Ryoko was taken aback. "I'll eat with you." "Of course, I'm mainly afraid you won't have enough," Audra said with a smile. "TSK, I don't even know what it tastes like, what a waste." Ryoko gave Audra a contemptuous look. She then took the chopsticks that Audra handed her, picked up a noodle, covered her mouth, and slowly sucked it in like a lady. "How does it taste?" Audra looked forward to Ryoko's evaluation. When he saw what seemed to be a flash of light on the girl's face, he already had an idea. Unfortunately, this wasn't an anime. If it was China's cooking master teacher, there should be a scene of a group of young girls in Cheongsam fanning themselves in the back. If it was Spirit of the Halberd Eaters, there might even be clothes exploding or something, barely passable. "It's about half the level of my chef," Ryoko said after tasting the first mouthful. Then, she ate the whole pot of noodles. Audra said that he wanted to eat with her, but in fact he only ate a small bowl, mainly to taste the taste. While cleaning the table, Audra showed off the empty pot to Kamiya Ryoko. "I told you, it won't go to waste. Don't be too pleased with yourself, I just think it's shameful to waste." "It's not because your noodles are delicious." Ryoko snorted. She rubbed her belly and felt that she had indeed eaten a little too much, but the amazing thing was, she didn't feel bloated at all. Although it was her first time eating Audra's bamboo noodles, it had to be said that it did indeed leave a rich aftertaste. Audra stole a glance at the contented girl. While he was secretly happy, he couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. After eating the noodles, Ryoko's belly did look a little bigger, but it still hadn't grown in the places it should have. What a pity. After washing the pot, Audra saw the girl sitting on the sofa, looking very preoccupied. "What are you thinking about?" Audra noticed a problem. It was said that when one was full, one would think about money, but Ryoko was the opposite. After eating, she started to let her imagination run wild. "I was wondering if it was the right decision to let classmates' son and the others go to the Ryoko family." Ryoko was very worried. Only Ryoko herself knew how dangerous the Ryoko family was. Not to mention the power on the surface, there were turbulent undercurrents behind them. Once they got caught up, it would be difficult for them to get out. It's fine, I'll keep an eye on them. Audrey's calm eyes comforted Ryoko at that moment. He glanced at the time and saw that it was already 1 in the morning, so he asked, "Shall I send you back? Or are you going to stay here with me?" "Who wants to stay here with you?" Ryoko patted Audrey hard on the shoulder and got up. But as soon as she got up, Audrey grabbed her wrist and abruptly pulled her into his arms. Kiyomiya Ryoko felt like a yo-yo. Before she could react, Audrey had already hugged her. "What are you doing?" Faced with such a rude action, Ryoko was both ashamed and annoyed, but strangely, her body actually didn't reject Audrey's approach. "It's nothing, I just want to hug you." Audrey's voice was very low, as if he was acting spoiled, and Ryoko's heart trembled when she heard it. "Let go of me. I really have to go back." Ryoko pinched Audrey's thigh hard and struggled out of his arms with a red face. "I'm sorry, classmate Ryoko, I was rude." Audrey smiled and raised his hands in surrender. "Like hell I'll believe you." Ryoko snorted. She had already realized it. Apologizing humbly and daring to do it again next time, this was Audrey's true attitude when admitting his mistake. After a brief silence, Ryoko felt her mood calm down a little, and her face suddenly darkened as she resumed her cold look. "I'm leaving. Shall I see you off?" Audrey asked. "No need." Ryoko's voice was cold, and the corners of her lips twitched slightly. The better Audrey treated her, the more sober she felt. Like she was reflecting on a hangover, Ryoko was reflecting on the unseen future between her and Audrey. When she reached the door, her figure seemed dispirited, which made Audrey's heart ache a little, and he had the urge to rush forward and hug her again. But he felt that this might arouse the girl's disgust, so he resisted the urge and didn't rush forward. For some reason, he felt that Ryoko suddenly had a lot on her mind. Before leaving Audrey's apartment, she left him with one last sentence. "Don't do this in the future. It's better for us to be friends." Then, she quickly turned the doorknob and stepped out without hesitation. "Have I been rejected?" Audrey's heart twitched violently, and he smiled bitterly in his heart. He knew that Ryoko wouldn't open her heart so easily. This was to be expected. Because he was worried about the girl going home alone. After Ryoko left, Audrey had immediately sent a scout to secretly follow her. "Classmate Ryoko, it won't be that easy to shake me off." At that moment, Audrey was standing by the window, gazing lovingly in the direction of the villa where Ryoko lived and smiling slightly. No matter what Ryoko said or thought, he was certain. The girl in front of him was the happiness of his life. No one could sleep tonight. Whether it was Audrey or Ryoko, it was destined to be a sleepless night. Elsewhere, in an elegant mansion deep in the inner courtyard of the Ryoko family on Sun Island, the sixth wife of the Ryoko family was also having a sleepless night. Akano Hoshi was the name of the sixth wife before she had married into the Ryoko family. Now, she had changed her name to Ryoko. She was the youngest and most beautiful of all Ryoko's father's wives, and also the one with the richest family background. When the sixth wife had married into the Ryoko family back then, it had caused quite a stir. She was the only daughter of Sun Island's famous underworld gang, the Star Picking Group. Many people wished to marry into the Star Picking Group, but in the end, Akano Hoshi had still chosen the Ryoko family. It was a quiet night. Ryoko was sitting by the stove in her elegant room, waiting for news from Hwashio Nation. She was wearing a black fur coat, and there was a profound look in her eyes. "Sixth wife." A slightly aged but magnetic voice rang out. It was none other than luminous Immortal Harmony. This was the Ryoko family foreign affairs liaison officer who had spoken to Ryoko on the phone earlier. He had come here mainly to report on the exchange student program. The sixth wife in front of him was the last one. Because she didn't have the habit of using modern technology or communication magic treasures, there were a lot of things that needed to be communicated verbally. After marrying into the Ryoko family, she rarely interacted with the other members of the Ryoko family. Apart from going out, her range of activity was this elegant room and the small garden around it. luminous immortal Harmony had a feeling. He felt that the sixth wife was a dangerous woman who had seen through everything. "Is it news from Ryoko?" asked the sixth wife. "Yes, madam. Miss Ryoko said that a group of exchange students from number 60 high will be arriving soon. Our Ryoko family will be in charge of hosting them this time," said luminous immortal Harmony. "Of course. These are distinguished guests from afar, and we should take them seriously." The sixth wife opened her charming eyes and smiled. "Has the school in charge of the handover been arranged?" "It's Judao High School," luminous immortal Harmony answered truthfully. This was a school that the Ryoko family had invested in, and was very close to the Ryoko family mansion in East Prefecture City on Sun Island. Before Ryoko had transferred schools, she had been studying at Judao High School. Thus, the sixth wife already had an idea when she heard this name, and a thoughtful expression appeared on her face. After a moment of silence, she asked again, "What about the accommodation arrangements? Do they live on campus or in the Ryoko family mansion?" "Rooms have been prepared on both sides. Look at the choices of the teachers and the children on number 60 high school's side. They can go back and forth freely." "Understood." The sixth wife nodded. "Thank you for your hard work, luminous immortal." "You're welcome, madam. Also, help me get ready. I'm going out." "What are you going to do, sixth wife?" "I'm just going to the Buddhist temple to pray for blessings. We have guests coming from afar, and this is a small token of my appreciation." "Yes." At the same time, on the other side of the Ryoko family mansion, Hideshi Gyoya was also having a secret discussion with the one-eyed warrior next to him. "I think this student exchange program is aimed at me." Hideshi Gyoya frowned. Together with the one-eyed warrior, he had planned the riot of the replica version of the ghost book with the intention of killing Ryoko, but for some reason, the powerful ghosts that had been released had all been eradicated. The powerful ghosts that had been released were all eradicated, and Jimiya Ryoko had successfully escaped from danger without suffering any damage at all. The riot program can't be used a second time in a short period of time, and it's hard to find any evidence. "I handled it very cleanly, young master." Standing on one side, the one-eyed warrior said, "Besides, our informants have already confirmed that Miss Ryoko is still in Huashio Nation. There's no need to panic. I thought this was just an ordinary student exchange program. But I heard that eldest Miss Son of Huagwa Water Curtain Group is coming, that's why I'm relieved." The one-eyed warrior smiled. Miss Ryoko and that eldest Miss Sun have always had a grudge against each other. I also heard that on the first day Miss Ryoko went to number 60 high school, she fell into this eldest Miss Sun's trap. She was drugged with a hallucinogenic drug that wasn't fatal. This embarrassed Miss Ryoko for a while. "So that's what happened." Hideshi Gyoya was surprised. "That's right." The one-eyed warrior continued, "Since the two of them don't get along, I think our chance might have come." "What do you mean?" He looked at the one-eyed warrior. The one-eyed warrior said, "If we can take advantage of eldest Miss Sun's participation in this exchange meet to befriend her, we might not even need to deal with her. This is the art of war, killing with a borrowed knife." Hideshi Gyoya smiled coldly. "Killing with a borrowed knife?" Jiogong Shosher sneered, "Killing with a borrowed knife?" Hideshi Gyoya had long heard of what kind of person Lotus Sun was. Winning over such a eldest miss was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Besides, Huagwa Water Curtain Group and the Jiogong family were essentially competitors. Hideshi Gyoya racked his brains, but he didn't think that Lotus Sun would so easily join the Jiogong family's dispute. No matter how hard Hideshi racked his brains, he didn't think that Lotus Sun would easily join the Jiogong family's dispute. If this matter came to light, Huagwa Water Curtain Group might be affected to some extent. It would be foolish for her to casually join another family's internal war. Miss Lotus Sun doesn't lack for anything, whether it's money or material goods, so we can only find another way. Therefore, we have no choice but to find another way. At this time, the one-eyed warrior wore a cold smile on his fiendish face, sending chills down everyone's spines. Hideshi Gyoya was curious. "You have a way?" "I have another piece of information." It said that this Miss Lotus' son and a classmate with the surname Wang have been involved in a scandal, the one-eyed warrior said. The one-eyed warrior said, and this time, among the people accompanying us, there are 2 other exchange students with the surname Wang. I just don't know which one of them it is. When the one-eyed warrior said this, Hideshi Juya's expression instantly lit up. I understand. You want to. He knew his one-eyed warrior's style too well. That's right. Since we can't win eldest Miss Sun over with money or material goods, we can start with the boy she likes. Then, we'll start with the boy Miss Lotus' son likes. There might be a chance. The one-eyed warrior said, but because we're not sure which one she likes in the group with the surname Wang, we can only tie up those 2 boys. Will that work? Hideshi Juya suddenly felt that this plan wasn't reliable. It's just 2 foundation establishment boys. They won't be able to resist at all. The one-eyed warrior said confidently, even if there's a teacher guarding them, we just need to lure him away. It won't turn into a diplomatic incident, will it? Hideshi Juya was still worried. These 2 boys come from very ordinary families. It might be difficult for ordinary existences like them to cause a splash. I still hope that young master can think things through. This is the best opportunity right now. The one-eyed warrior felt that he had already considered this matter very thoroughly. Although he seemed to be threatening Miss Sun on the surface, this operation wasn't aimed at her, after all. It would be too exaggerated to escalate to a diplomatic issue. Moreover, he wouldn't really kill the 2 boys, nor did he have to kidnap them. He just had to cater to their preferences and keep them under surveillance for a period of time. The overall risk of the operation was very low, and once he succeeded, he would be able to win over Miss Sun's support. He even felt that he could retire. With Miss Sun's financial resources, he didn't have to worry about Hideshi Juya being unable to assume the position of head of the family. However, whether this matter would succeed or not depended on Hideshi Juya's opinion. The one-eyed warrior was only a fighter, an errand boy, and a strategist. He couldn't overstep his authority when it came to critical decisions. This was also out of respect for his late master, Hideshi Juya's birth mother. After hearing the one-eyed warrior's opinion, Hideshi Juya sat in his wheelchair and thought for a long time as if he was in a daze. There wasn't much time left for him. This time, the riot plan of the copy of the ghost record failed, although it did not directly kill Kumi or Yoko. However, it also made Hideshi Juya notice the power of Madame Lu. Madame Lu represented Sun Island's most famous underworld organization, the Star Pluckers. In other words, the Star Pluckers also wanted to interfere in the future head of the family election. This was something that Hideshi Juya hadn't expected. If they wanted to contend with the Star Pluckers in the future, they wouldn't be able to rely on the chips they had. They needed more powerful reinforcements in order to do so. At this thought, Hideshi Juya couldn't help taking a deep breath. Man proposes, God disposes. So, young master's answer is? Asked the one-eyed warrior. Hideshi Juya gritted his teeth. Do it. It was Monday, December 14th, morning. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun arrived at Songhai International Boat Yard on time. Through the airport's huge glass windows and bright sunlight, Wang Ling saw huge immortal boats moored on the immortal boat yard. Wang Ling hadn't slept at all last night. It wasn't for any other reason, but because he had been calculating the pocket money he had saved up. Compared with Lotus Sun, his pocket money clearly wasn't enough, and probably didn't even have a fraction of what he had. Wang Ling transferred all the New Year's money and the pocket money that Father Wang had given him into his phone wallet. Total, 87.20. 3. Including the 5,000 yuan that Mother Wang had provided for him before he went abroad this time, Wang Ling only had a little over 13,000 yuan on him. To sum it up in one word, poor. In Wang Ling's opinion, it indeed wasn't enough to save up for 16 years. Of course, there were various reasons for this. For example, the limited edition crispy noodle snacks he had bought, and Father Wang had docked his pocket money for no reason. All of these were reasons why Wang Ling's wallet had shrunk year after year. The main point was that he still couldn't use his abilities to make money. This was a big headache. He estimated that his little sister Anwan's birth date was approaching, and he wanted to take advantage of this trip abroad to buy her some interesting gifts, little clothes, little shoes, little pants. But given the prices abroad, it would be very difficult for Wang Ling to make a big splash with the little money he had. Infant products were expensive nowadays. The same brand of clothes would cost the same amount of fabric, but the price would still be the same. So, was he going to take advantage of this time to work on Sun Island? To make more money? Last night, Wang Ling had been seriously thinking about the issue of funds. There was no way he would trouble Lotus Sun to buy Anwan a gift. His own good intentions would be completely different if he took someone else's money. Although he knew that if he asked, given that Missy's temper, she might book the entire shopping mall for him to choose from. But that would be too high profile, and there was no need for it. So it wasn't a bad idea to do odd jobs to make more money. The Jiugong family was an aristocratic family on Sun Island that hunted ghosts and exorcised demons to begin with, so there was no need to worry about a lack of jobs in this area. When the time came, Wang Ling reckoned that as long as he made some inquiries, it shouldn't be a problem for him to get rid of some demons and ghosts. For Wang Ling, slaying demons and exorcising demons didn't count as using his abilities, because he actually didn't need to use his abilities at all. As long as he stood there for a moment, those ghosts would be scared out of their wits. Thus, in order to make it easier for him to take on missions, Wang Ling spent some time studying Sun Island's native language. It had to be said that learning a language was very difficult. Every country had different characters, and pronunciation was also very important. It had to be said that it took Wang Ling about 3 minutes to learn Sun Island's native language. This was indeed very difficult for Wang Ling. It didn't seem that it had taken him that long to learn Shinto and Fate Dao back then. After passing through the green visa channel first with Lotus Sun noticed that Wang Ling's expression was solemn and seemed a little autistic. She pulled Jua aside, who had come to see them off, and asked quietly, "Senior Jua, do you know what's wrong with classmate Wang Ling?" If she hadn't known Wang Ling's true strength, Lotus Sun would definitely have thought that Wang Ling most likely hadn't slept well or was sick. But now, it was clear that something was on his mind. This slow-witted blockhead always liked to keep things to himself, and Lotus Sun always felt like she didn't know what to do. The girl had no other choice but to ask Jua. "This? I'm not too sure either." Jua scratched his face awkwardly. But looking at Shifu's expression, there can only be two possibilities. 1. There are no limited edition crispy noodle snacks on Sun Island. Alright, that was very Wang Ling. Then what about the second possibility? Maybe his pocket money has been deducted again, said Jua. This actually reminded Lotus Sun of something. Naturally, the most worrying thing about going abroad was a lack of money. If it was a problem in this regard, the girl thought it was possible. She felt that she should have thought of it long ago, since Anwan's hatching day was approaching. It was likely that Wang Ling was currently worrying about the gift for Anwan's hatching day. Money had never been a problem for Lotus Sunday. But the truth was that she was well aware of the significance of this gift for Anwan, which was also why Wang Ling had kept it to himself. If he hadn't used his own pocket money to buy a gift for his little sister, it probably wouldn't have meant anything at all, right? She wanted to support Wang Ling, but given this blockhead's personality, he definitely wouldn't take it. And so, as they walked, Lotus Sun also became autistic like Wang Ling. There's always a way. Jua dropped his forehead into his hand and smiled bitterly helplessly as he comforted her in a low voice. Take advantage of this time abroad to communicate with Shifu. I will. Lotus Sun nodded. Jua then took the two autistic youngsters to the VIP lounge before departure. All the formalities had been completed. They just had to wait for the immortal boat to open. Wang Ling shut himself away in the lounge for a while. A few minutes later, there was a broadcast for takeoff nearby. At that moment, a tall young man who was wrapped up in an extremely disguise walked toward them on his slender legs. As soon as he got close, he reached out to rub Wang Ling's head. "Sorry, Ling Ling. I'm late." It was Wang Ming's voice. Wang Ling raised his head and saw that not only had Wang Ming disguised himself, even his appearance had changed, and was completely different from Wang Ming's original appearance. It looked like Wang Ming had used an elixir that could be molded to reconstruct his facial features. Wang Ming's disguise wasn't good-looking, but it wasn't ugly either. It was the kind of common face that would be easily forgotten in a vast sea of people. And this was exactly what the officials wanted Wang Ming to achieve. After a lot of effort, he finally managed to reunite with Wang Ling and Lotus Sun here, and Wang Ming was extremely excited. He plopped down on the sofa and directly wrapped an arm around Wang Ling's neck. There was a mischievous smile on his face, and it was hard to conceal his idiotic personality. I only finished the approval process in the wee hours of the morning. I just want to go abroad with my little brother and sister-in-law. It's not easy. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, immediately blushed. Brother Ming, don't joke with me, it doesn't matter now, but after we go out, you must remember to call me second brother, Wang Ming reminded him. Okay, second brother. Also, I have to tell you that when we get there, we have to wait for D and Senior Golden Lamp at the Immortal Boatyard on Sun Island. They were busy with my business last night, and haven't finished their own approval process yet. That's why we have to wait for Class 1, Wang Ming said telepathically. This wasn't telepathy, but Wang Ming's direct use of his brain waves to communicate telepathically. For an ordinary person's brain waves to be developed to this extent, Wang Ming was indeed the only person in the world who could do this. So it was no wonder the officials had been so cautious in approving Wang Ming. At that moment, Wang Ming suddenly frowned. There was a wary look in his eyes as he continued to use his brain waves to secretly communicate with Wang Ling and Lotus Sunday. Do you feel anything? Wang Ling and Lotus Sun both nodded. Someone was watching them. Furthermore, this person was a passenger on the same flight as them. He was a man in a woolen hat, sunglasses and a black down jacket. How's the situation? At that moment, a voice came from the man's mini headset. Don't worry, everything is going smoothly. Be careful, don't get caught, don't worry. It's just 3 Foundation establishment students. They can't even complete this little task. How can I face young master? Although he had been using sunglasses and pretending to read the newspaper to demonstrate, this person clearly hadn't expected that the moment he harbored ill intentions, he had already been targeted by the people he was monitoring. Even more so, he hadn't expected the 3 people he was monitoring. One was the most powerful brain on Earth. Another was the most powerful Foundation establishment cultivator on Earth. And the last was Earth's father. Chapter 1498. Early in the morning, the 6th Madam of the Jiugong family woke up. After simply combing her hair, the graceful 6th Madam left through the back door of the Jiugong residence with only 2 maids who accompanied her. Worshipping Buddha required sincerity, and meeting Buddha without makeup was a form of respect. The back door was on the way to the temple that the 6th Madam was going to, and it would not disturb others. Therefore, every time she went to worship Buddha, the 6th Madam would leave through the back door. Ming of Immortals had already arranged everything. He arranged for a black car of the Jiugong family to be parked at the back door. It was already 2 hours later when they officially arrived at the Tianxian Buddhist temple. The scene in front of the temple surprised the 2 maids behind the 6th Madam. The riveted door of the temple was wide open, and the stone lion head kowtowing on it, together with the surrounding stone walls, showed the model taste of time. The murals on the stone walls had been weathered by wind and rain for years, and although the color had long been dull, it had a sense of simplicity and era. The Tianxian Buddhist temple was the most famous Buddhist temple in the East Prefecture. Usually, even in the early morning, the pilgrims who came to visit would break the threshold. Jiugong Xinghui and 2 maids arrived at 7 o'clock. Under the preparation of Ming of Immortals, the Jiugong family and the star plucking group worked together to clear the area, blocking all the roads leading to the temple. They set aside an hour for the 6th Madam to worship Buddha. Along the stone walls of the temple, there was a member of the star plucking group standing every 3 meters. These people were dressed in the same light blue coarse monk clothes, and each of them was equipped with Buddhist beads. They were responsible for the safety and order of the sixth madam's worship. The number of people added up to a few hundred people. This was the basic operation every time the sixth madam went out to worship Buddha. The other pilgrims couldn't enter, and although they complained in their hearts, they didn't dare to express anything. They had to give face to the Jogong family and the star-plucking group. In a sense, when these two sects united, their prestige might be much greater than that of the Buddha in the Buddhist temple. Some people became Buddhists for comfort. But if they wanted to survive, they still had to be social people. They were just recruited by the sixth madam, and their backgrounds were very clean. Jogong Xinghui had the intention to train them. The reason I brought you out today is to let you get used to it. Before formally paying respects to Buddha, Jogong Xinghui glanced at the two of them and said, "When you work under me, don't make a fuss no matter what you encounter. Don't show that you've never seen the world, understand?" "Yes, madam." The two maids followed behind and nodded obediently. "The two of you don't need to follow me. Other than this hall in front of us, I'll leave the other halls to you. Be sure to light 3 candles in front of each Buddha statue." Passing through the courtyard, Jogong Xinghui took out the incense stick that he had prepared in advance. She handed 2 bundles to the maids and instructed them. The 2 maids nodded and each took their own bundle of incense sticks. They started to worship from the side hall. Out of the corner of her eye, the sixth madam saw the 2 of them leaving. Immediately, a small flame rose from her fingertip and ignited the joss stick. She slowly walked towards the main hall. In the end, the figure disappeared into the main hall. Sixth madam went to Tianxian Temple again. On the other side, Hideshi Kwamiya, who was enjoying breakfast in Sakura Garden, heard the news from one-eyed. If ordinary people went to worship Buddha, Hideshi Kwamiya could not care less. However, this sixth madam always made a big fuss every time she worshipped Buddha. She had long since annoyed Hideshi Kwamiya. However, the star-plucking group's actions on Sun Island had always been high-profile. This kind of domineering style was, in fact, their consistent style. Jogong Xinghui's actions seemed to be in line with the star-plucking group's style. However, as their current opponent, Hideshi Kwamiya had actually been suspicious about this for a long time. He felt that the sixth madam's actions every time she went to the temple to worship Buddha. It seemed a little unusual. "Do you still remember the burglary that happened in the sixth madam's house before she got married?" Hideshi Kwamiya frowned and said to the one-eyed samurai. "Of course I remember." The one-eyed samurai nodded. Before he was transferred to Hideshi Kwamiya's personal guard, he also worked as a guard for the Jogong family. A burglary happened in the heavily guarded Jogong's house. This was indeed fresh in his memory. At that time, Jogong's house was searched and nothing was stolen. There were only a few traces of the door locks being pried open. At this point, the one-eyed man's eyes darkened, and he continued, "But the locks that were picked all point to the seal of the ghost record deep underground." "That's right. Although at first my father suspected it was a coincidence. But these locks that have been picked are too coincidental." Sitting in the wheelchair, Hideshi Kyuya said with a reminiscing expression, "Our Kyuya family has an area the size of 10 university campuses. The internal routes are complicated, and this was specially calculated by the formation masters. There are a total of 132 mansions and tens of thousands of keyholes. In order to open the passageway leading to the underground seal, we must open 49 specific keyholes on the same day, and we must open them accordingly. The keyhole changes every day. Only my father, who holds the Patriarch's token, knows the password. And on the day of the theft, there were a total of 68 keyholes, and among them, 42 locks were the designated mechanism locks on that day." Jiogong Xiushi smirked. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? There were 49 locks that changed positions every day, but on the day of the theft, 42 of them were hit. Although there were a total of 68 of them, it was obvious that the thief was just trying to cover up the fact that he had stolen all of them. "Young master, do you mean that the sixth madam might be related to this attempted burglary?" I don't have direct evidence, but I have reason to suspect that the purpose of that woman marrying into our family is very likely to be for the ghost record. That's why I've been asking you to investigate her visit to the temple. Jiugong Shoshir pondered for a moment before continuing. Ever since she married into the family, the sixth madam has indeed looked like a woman who abides by her morals and stands aloof from worldly affairs. But in fact, I still feel that she went to the temple to worship on the surface, but she might be secretly plotting with the upper echelons of the star pluckers. But it's a pity that we haven't found even the slightest trace of these things. The one-eyed warrior sighed. He had in fact investigated the sixth madam many times, but each time, he hadn't found anything particularly reliable. From the initial attempted burglary to the sixth madam marrying into the Jiugong family, and then to the sixth madam's frequent visits to the temple to worship, while there were gaps in the clues, the timing and coincidence were the most important. Jiugong Shoshir had noticed very early on that this sixth madam had an ulterior motive. In his wheelchair, Jiugong Shoshir frowned deeply. Also, she has been plotting against our Jiugong family for a long time. If an outsider comes at a time like this, it might disrupt her original rhythm. So, young master, you sent people to keep an eye on number 60 high to protect them? Of course. Jiugong Shoshir nodded. Since we're going to carry out the kidnapping plan, we have to ensure their safety at the very least before they land on Sun Island. Otherwise, our plan to win over Miss Sun will be completely dashed. He was obsessed with the fight for the position of head of the family, and had even ruthlessly set up a trap to kill Jiugong Ryoko back then. But now, Jiugong Shoshir realized that perhaps he and Jiugong Ryoko shared the same attitude toward the sixth madam. This woman was very dangerous. Perhaps even more frightening than Jiugong Ryoko. A ferocious viper wasn't scary, but a quiet viper lurking in the dark was. Usually, it would just sit there. It looked like it was asleep. But no one knew when it would raise its head and bite. The one-eyed warrior felt that things had become interesting. Young Master Shoshir, do you think that the sixth madam will make a move on the plane? Given her personality, it's very likely. Jiugong Shoshir smiled bitterly. But my stepmother has always been patient. I just don't know if she'll take the bait this time. Maybe. The one-eyed warrior frowned. If it can be faked as a plane crash, there will indeed be no witnesses. Plane crash. That sounds like something the star pluckers would do. Jiugong Shoshir frowned. So, are the people we sent reliable? This is my right-hand man, a nascent soul cultivator. He once received systematic training in the army and has a lot of experience. I don't think there will be any problems. Make another call later and ask about the situation. It won't be long before they board the boat. Yes. After smoothly boarding the immortal boat, Wang Ling and the others were seated in business class at the very front. The seats in business class were very spacious and comfortable. Everyone had a leather sofa, which came with a full-body massage and the ability to freely adjust the angle of their reclining position. Wang Ling actually didn't really need a massage. His body was too dense. Although he had used light body techniques to reduce his weight, his body was in fact still as hard as iron. Even a massage head made of alloy might resonate and shatter when it vibrated on Wang Ling's body. As soon as the man who had been monitoring them in the lounge boarded the boat, he realized that Wang Ling and the others were all sitting in business class, and his expression instantly turned a little awkward. Miss, can we upgrade the cabin? I want to upgrade to business class. Thus, the man gritted his teeth and asked the air stewardess on the immortal boat. I'm very sorry, sir, but all business class has been booked, the pretty air stewardess replied patiently. Not a single one left? Yes, sir, the air stewardess replied. Business class tickets on the immortal boat were very expensive, they were 10 times more expensive than economy class. There were also very limited seats, there were only 10 in total. Right now, there were only 3 people in business class, Wang Ling, Wang Ming and Lotus Sunday. However, Lotus Sun clearly didn't want their space to be disturbed by outsiders. She knew that Wang Ling liked peace and quiet, and might not be used to strangers sitting next to him. Thus, the girl used what didn't seem to be a lot of pocket money to take all the seats. Are there any first-class seats left? Yes, sir. Good. Help me upgrade to first class. The man didn't give up. Since he couldn't get into business class, he tried to get into first class. This was the cabin closest to business class, and the point was that if he wanted to pass through business class, he had to pass through first class. He had been sent by Xiushi Jiugong, and would be able to detect anyone suspicious at a glance. This was a bad plan, but it was also a helpless move. There was no one else in business class. But for safety's sake, Wang Ming directly used Wang Ling 3's magnetic shield to completely cover this area. This was to ensure that no one else could listen in on the exchange in business class. Who on earth is that person? He's sneaky, but he doesn't seem to have any murderous intent. Lotus Sun asked reassuringly. This was the most intuitive feeling she had when she used sword chi. If the person had malicious intentions, Mysterious C would immediately detect his murderous intent and give Lotus Sun a warning. If I'm not mistaken, it should be someone from the Jiugong family, Wang Ming said. I secretly took a photo of him in the lounge earlier, and then used my authority to access the international big data facial recognition system to scan him. I found that this person is called Mu Yiling, and he's at the nascent soul stage. He used to be a member of the Sun Island Self-Defense Force. After retiring, he currently works for the Jiugong family. Brother Air, you're amazing. He covered himself up so tightly, but you still managed to take a photo? Lotus Sun laughed. It's actually very easy to use the associative scanning mechanism. It's actually useless to wear sunglasses. When I take a photo, the scanning light can directly penetrate the sunglasses and shine on his eyes. As long as I can get one or two facial features and combine them with the actual body shape for associative scanning, it'll be easy to get facial data. As Wang Ming spoke, he stretched out an arm and rested his head on it, looking relaxed and leisurely. This person probably isn't planning on doing anything to us. Or rather, he isn't planning on doing anything to us on the immortal boat. If he's an official from the Jiugong family responsible for protecting us, he should have contacted us in advance. Based on his appearance and his identity, it seems like he's not a bad person. It seems like they were sent by a faction within the Jiugong family to protect us. Lotus Sun almost laughed out loud when she heard this. Lotus Sun almost burst out laughing. Given their current lineup, they didn't lack protection at all. Even if Wang Ling wasn't included, given Wang Ming's current battle strength alone, it would be very difficult for an average cultivator to defeat him. Furthermore, Huaxiao Alliance had in fact placed great importance on security because Wang Ming was traveling with them this time. Apart from Zhai Yin, who had come with them on the immortal boat, they had also applied for special protection from Battle Sect. In other words, it looked like there were only 4 of them participating in the student exchange program. But the truth was that there were thousands of troops following them from the shadows. In any case, that's the situation. This kid isn't moving now, so we don't need to pay too much attention to him. Wang Ming laughed. It's possible that there really is another group of people who want to do us harm. Maybe this person has received some information. But since we're on the immortal boat, they're too bold to make a move on us. Do they want to cause an air crash? Who knows? Wang Ming spread his hands. He looked at Wang Ling next to him with a meaningful smile. I just hope that those people can live in peace. After all, the ceiling of the cultivation world is right next to me. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.